Hello, my scrumptious ravens. Welcome to Ravens Real Talk, new layout. Hi! I worked really hard on this, so I'm really happy with how it turned out. Hi, guys. Nice to see you here. If you are new here, welcome. Hello, my name is Raven, and this is Raven's Real Talk. It is a talk show that I created on my channel in which I bring topics, every other Monday that are really important to me or that I feel should be spoken about and that we all should be educated about, and more awareness needs to be created about these topics. And I am usually joined by 2 to 3 guests. And today I'm joined with 3 scrumptious guests that I've met in different ways, which is really interesting. Each of them I've met in different ways, and I'm really excited for you to meet all of them. But let me say hi to everyone before we get into it. Hi, Slay. Hi, Jeremy. Hi, DJB. Hi, Brandon. Hi, Do Muffin. Hold on. Rizaline Beatrice? Hello, welcome. Hope I'm saying your name right. Beto Boost, hello, welcome. Annie, hi, scrumptious, welcome. BenRen96, hello. Jess, thank you. I worked really hard on it. Thank you. I appreciate that. Mocha and me. I told you already, but I'm gonna say it again. Your name makes me like feel all warm and fuzzy. It makes me think of mocha, even though it makes me poop. But you know, the before the poop situation, it's a good time. It's a good time. Hi, young subby. Benny, my man. Young's my guy. All right, guys. So, for those of you who are regulars here, y'all know the drill. We're gonna start off with what we are grateful for. I'm gonna say that I have lately, I don't know, for the past couple of days, I've been noticing that I've been feeling more grateful for my hair. And this might be like, Raven, you're so extra. Why are you grateful for your hair? But it's a huge deal to me because I spent a lot of my life hating on my hair because it's, you know, Middle Eastern and Pakistani, the mix. And I didn't get the Pakistani side of hair. I got the Middle Eastern side, which is very dry just by nature. It doesn't matter how many oils you put in, how much maintenance you do, what products you put, it will always be dry. And it took me so long to really accept that and embrace it. And I spent so much time hating on my hair, something I couldn't control, something I don't need to control, to be honest. I just need to get enough, you know, Moroccan oil in there to just make it under control so that it's manageable. But oh my god. Oh, thank you, subby, for the host. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. So it took me meeting someone who had a medical condition, who had then lost their hair because of this medical condition, for me to, oh my god, guys, I'm talking about something serious. Thank you for the host beat. I appreciate it. Thank you. Yes, they had a medical condition, and because of this medical condition, they lost their hair. And I saw how sad it made them to lose their hair. And I started thinking to myself, like, oh my god, what if I developed a medical condition somewhere in my life, which it's a reality for a lot of people. You know, they're healthy, they're fine, and then they suddenly, out of the blue, none of us are safe, not to get morbid, but like it really makes you try to be more grateful, right? So I started thinking, what if I lost my hair, and all this hate that I'm showing towards my hair, I would miss it. I would miss it. That's the real thing. And so it took me that terrible encounter to learn to appreciate my hair. So I've been grateful for my hair. I'm appreciating it's a little bit of self-love too. I love my hair. And, you know, for as long as I have it, I'm going to try my best to be grateful for it. And I'm grateful for the meal that I'm about to have, or possibly might have after Raven's Real Talk, because I probably will get so engrossed in the amazing conversation that I will not be eating. But I'm grateful that my mom asked me if she wanted me to save if she wanted me to save some rice for what? She asked me if she should save some rice for me. Thank you. There we go. That's what I was trying to say. And when I was done my work, I went to the kitchen. I was like, I literally have 30 minutes, and then I gotta, get ready for real talk. And she heated up my food for me. So God bless my mom, and bless the food. I'm so grateful that I have access to food, and I'm able to really eat whatever I want. So yeah, that's what I'm grateful for. And as always, you all are more than welcome to join in, but there is absolutely no pressure whatsoever. Hi Jeff. Yeah, words, right? Alrighty, so now that I have done my daily stream ritual, we are going to get into some serious stuff. As you all can tell by the topic of today's conversation. Thank you, Annie, for that host. I appreciate it. Thank you, Scrumptious. As you all can tell by the topic, we're talking about addictions, and this is one of the many very serious and important conversations that we have on this show. And I want to create a safe environment where people feel comfortable to share their own stories, their experiences, without any kind of judgment or hate or negativity. So if you haven't read this already, please go ahead and read these rules. Thank you, Boost, for that host. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Oops. Ripperoni. Oh my God. Tech is hard. Hold on. Oh my goodness. We're just going to keep it. All right. Without further ado, like Prince Abu from Aladdin, let's get into my scrumptious guests. So, the first person I would like to introduce to everybody is someone that I met so randomly. So, Felicity was having, she was joining other streamers to play Among Us, like in October sometime. And I actually wasn't going to be able to join because I was busy with something. I can't remember what I was busy with. And then, my evening randomly freed up, so I messaged her in, I think, her Discord or something, and I was like, oh, is that Among Us thing still going on? And she said, yeah, it was. So I joined, and I got to meet all these wonderful people that were all so kind and so nice to me. And I know I sound probably so childish when I say, oh my God, they were so nice to me, but like, as you get older, you learn to appreciate when people are nice to you, because it really is a choice when people are nice to you. It's a choice, guys. It's a choice. So when people make the choice to be nice to you, kind to you, welcoming and warm, and, they would just make you feel like you're not an outsider, it's really valuable, at least to me. And although I didn't get to interact a lot with Jess, because I think I only played 2 or 3 games and then I headed off, but I remember from the time that I was there, she was just super chill and super cool and super nice. And then after I logged off the games for the night, I went into her stream, and I wanted to see who the person was, and she was so wonderful. So please help me welcome the scrumptious Jess. Hi, Jess.
Hi. Yes, they can. How's it going?
It's going wonderful. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for asking me on to talk about this. Like, I talk on my own channel all the time about alcoholism and my journey with sobriety and stuff like that, because I think it's really important.
Yeah.
And is this where I should do my little 30-second intro thing?
Yes.
Okay, so hi. I see a lot of my own community members from the Bro Herd in chat, which I'm very excited about. Hi, Mocha. Hi, Benren. For the rest of you who don't know, hi, I'm Jess Brohard. As a profession, I'm an esports event host. So what that means is I've done all kinds of different roles. Like, I've been the sideline reporter, which means I'm the main stage interviewer for the Call of Duty World League. I hosted a show for Rainbow Six's North American League this past season. I also host for GameStop TV. So if you ever go into GameStop and you see the TVs up there, I have a segment up there called Shout Esports, where I teach folks how to become hosts, casters, and streamers. And then I also teach Intro to Esports at Shawnee State University. So I have a lot of really fun things that I like to do. And then my personal life, as far as like mental health and such goes, I'm a recovering alcoholic. I've been sober for about 2 years and 3 months. October 18th, October 22nd, 2018 was my sobriety date. So very excited to be here and talk about this because I love talking about it, because there's a lot of, I think, misconceptions about addiction and alcoholism, and that kind of keep people from getting sober as soon as they need to. So excited to be here.
Thank you. And I think you also have a podcast.
Yes, it's kind of on hiatus right now.
Okay.
Just because I'll talk about it a little bit. Yeah, it's called Happy Hour, and basically each episode I interview a different person that works in esports and gaming. A lot of them have been like commentators and streamers and stuff like that. A few folks have been behind the scenes, like we had Marty, who is the founder of the esports organization Splice, or the co-founder of Splice rather. And I talked to them about their career and their mental health and how the two go hand in hand, because I find that particularly with other folks who are on camera like myself, there's a high degree of imposter syndrome and like all kinds of other stuff like that. So we get into some really, really interesting topics. And then, we haven't done one in about a month or two, and it's it'll come back someday, but it's on like a temporary hiatus for now.
Okay, gotcha. But if you guys did want to check it out,
you could check out past episodes at happyhour.io, which is spelled with an I, HAPPIHOUR.io.
Thank you so much, Jess, for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. I'm like completely drawing a blank. Can one of you guys put up your hands? Who was next? Thank you. Never mind. This is the most unprofessional thing I can do. All right, guys. I'm just gonna edit that out. It's like it never happened. So the next wonderful guest I would like to invite onto the screen is someone that I met also by completely randomly. I think that I met him through someone from Twitch Sings, I want to say, but I can't remember who that link was, because I think like in my head it's like, oh, I always knew Subby, but I think I met Subby through somebody, but I can't remember who it was. And guys, if you guys haven't checked out Subby already, please check him out if you're interested in music, because he does have a very scrumptious voice. He's very talented. I just stopped by his stream yesterday. He was doing a guitar session. Please help me welcome the scrumptious Subby.
What's up, friends? How you doing?
Hi, Subby.
So, going back to your story, how we met, I believe it was actually through a Real Talk session. A music streamer friend of mine, Josh Franchise, he was on your show. I want to say a couple months ago.
Yes, Josh.
And
he's so wonderful.
He is amazing. But I had never been introduced to your channel, you or your channel before. So that's actually, I believe, the first time that we had ever interacted. And then, so.
Oh.
So yeah, it kind of all comes first full circle.
Full circle.
I start the first introduction to you is here, and then I'm really, really honored that you asked me to be on. So I guess my name is Young Sub 3. I go by Subby or Jack around my community, and I'm a music streamer. I took a pretty interesting path to get to Twitch. I was before COVID, I was working as a sports broadcaster here in the States. So I was doing a lot of radio, television work. And then the whole world obviously stopped happening.
Right.
So with all my free time and being out of work, music had always been a really casual hobby for me, but it was never something that I really seriously considered pursuing until I had way too much free time on my hands.
Interesting.
So that's when I decided to jump to Twitch and check out what Twitch was all about, and then I've been here since April. And I'm loving it. But yeah,
awesome.
I'm really honored you asked me to come on, especially this topic, addiction. As I'm sure we'll get into much further detail, but I've struggled with addiction to tobacco for many years of my life, and then just having an addictive personality that's influenced me in many ways that aren't necessarily the best of ways. So I'm really honored you asked to have me on to talk more about that today.
Thank you so much, Subby. And it's crazy because it was just like a random thing. Like, I didn't even know you that well. And I was like, you know what, I'm gonna take a shot in the dark, and it just ended up working out. And I really appreciate that you were open to speaking to me about it, especially being someone that you didn't know very well. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah,
very
absolutely.
much.
And this is, I mean, all these conversations, while they're difficult ones to have, they're really important ones to have too. So like this is awesome on you that you focus so much of your content creation too about real things that I think we all need to talk about, be comfortable talking about.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Yeah, it is so cool, isn't it? Yeah, and he's like, it's so cool. It's cool because you guys are kind of in the same industry, Jess and you. That's so
Yes.
cool. What are the chances? I had no idea. This is so cool. And last but not least, the Okay, I'm gonna tell you guys this story. Okay, so I was having a emotionally rough day one time, and I was like, you know what? As most, people who are interested in music, I'm gonna sing it out. I'm just gonna let my soul run free in Twitch Sings. So I opened up Twitch Sings, and I wanted to sing The Climb. And for those of you who don't know, The Climb, although it's such a I know people don't like Miley Cyrus and all this stuff, but like that song, bro, there's something about that song that's so relatable, and it breaks me, man. It really breaks me. So probably not the best choice to sing that song when I was already emotionally vulnerable, and I ended up picking DJ B's duet randomly, and I was like, I'm gonna sing with this person, and I just started bawling my way through the duet. I was just crying throughout the duet, and I think I hit him up later saying, I'm so sorry about that you had to witness that, and he was so kind about it. He's like, do not even worry. Like, he was so chill about it, so cool. Please help me welcome the scrumptious DJB, who also has a very scrumptious voice. Hello.
What's up, guys? How's it going?
I'm not crying this time.
Well, yes, so thank you for that introduction, Drake. For those of you guys that don't know me, my name is
DJ Babico,
Yes.
live in the mix.
but most people just call me DJB. And I'm so thankful to be a part of this discussion because, Raven, I've been a fan of this series that you do. So I'm glad that you were interested in having me on. So I definitely appreciate opportunities to just talk and get real. So yeah. Anyway,
Thank
I
you.
am a broadcast technician by trade based out of the San Francisco Bay Area.
Wow.
And on Twitch, I play shooter type games, and I also play music along with my wife, Rizline.
Mm-hmm.
As far as promotion goes, I just encourage you all to check out the Bastos podcast. It's a monthly podcast, and we interview and highlight the careers of people of color who have made an impact in the entertainment industry. Our newest episode dropped last week, interviewing pro wrestler and current TNA X Division champion TJP. So check that out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and yours truly is a co-host and editor. So you can catch me on that, and of course, twitch.tv/DJBMinkahan.
That is so cool. Oh my goodness. Thank you guys. That was such wonderful introductions. I always choke when it's time to introduce myself. So you guys did it with flying colors. Awesome job. Okay, so I'm trying something new with having the question that we're about to dive into on the screen. So I apologize if I have technical difficulties, but I'm going to try it real quick right now. Oh my god, it worked. Awesome. So as most of you can see, we're going to be talking about addictions, and each of these scrumptious guests have struggled with addictions in their own ways. And I do want to put a quick disclaimer out there. These are just their personal experiences that they will be talking about. They're not speaking on behalf of all the people who are who have struggled with these things. These are very isolated, personal experiences. So if they don't align with a possible experience that you've had, please keep that in mind, that they are not taking ownership for everyone's experience and everyone's recovery. And also, I want to say that I won't be contributing too much in the sense of talking about my personal experience, since I don't have any personal experience, and I don't want to be fake and be like, well, I have struggled as well. So I want to put that out there and just say that that's why this specific episode is going to be so unique, because usually I have things to contribute, but this is mainly going to be about the guests and, being educated about their experiences and what they've been through. So let's start off with the broad question, guys. To you, what is addiction? DJB, do you want to start us off?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think it's totally important to determine that, because I think part of the reason why I fell into addiction is because, early on, my preconceptions of what an addict was or how an addict would act led me to think, oh, I'm doing okay because at least I'm not like this,
Yep.
So I must not have an addiction. I would say at least I'm not destroying my life or whatever. But if I had to say what addiction is, I guess it would be when there's an act that becomes a habit and it starts to consume a part of your life in ways that are out of your control. You're giving up control to maintain that habit. At least in my experience, that's how I would say what addiction is.
And where were you getting your, I guess, reference points of at least I'm not like that? Was it from media or was it from people in your life or?
Yeah. Well, my family, my parents work with the underserved population here in the San Francisco Bay Area. So they would work with a lot of people that, just completely lost a lot of their lives, unfortunately, due to largely addiction, be it drug addiction or alcohol addiction or things like that. And so they would be a lot of times homeless or just lower income. And I would always hear stories about them saying the types of addiction that they were in. And so I guess that was my preconception of what an addict was. And of course, media as well. They, whenever you think of an addict, they're portrayed in media as someone who just has
nothing going for them,
right.
Nothing. Yeah.
Yeah, or they look unkempt. They live in a really dingy home by themselves. They're single. That's what society and media paints as an addict, right? So I guess because I had those preconceptions, that's I didn't really understand what an addict was, and that's why I think I fell fairly easily into that category of an addict before I realized I was.
Thank you. Jess, what about you?
So yeah, I agree with a lot of what DJB says, in that I also had this notion in my head of what an alcoholic looked like, and a large part of that was because of the media. And in my case, a large part of what kept me drinking for so long was just the industry that I work in, because the game industry and esports in general is so party heavy.
Wow.
And I think that surprises some people.
Yeah.
Because you're like, oh, it's a bunch of nerds. What into?
Right.
But you gotta understand, it's a bunch of nerds. You put them together in this event with 60,000 people attending, and then the people that work in the industry are the cool kids, so all of a sudden the nerds are the top dogs in our little pack, so And since like I have been working in gaming and esports full time for a number of years, I would be going to these events where it was like a typical, like a PAX East or an E3 or something like that. A typical event looks like you work on the show floor for like 8 hours during the day during the event, and then you go out in the evening, and that's when the real work begins, because that's when all the deals are made. That's when the networking happens, because you go out to the bars, and it becomes this game of, okay, which parties can we get into, which parties can we get the VIP list on. So that means, open bar, we don't have to pay for drinks, because everyone else that's at that like VIP exclusive party, there's someone worth knowing. So you get the drinks, and you exchange the business cards, and you do that whole deal. And then after that, you go to the after parties, and you like plan out the night so that you can hit this place from this time to this time, and then the next place, they're serving food along with the open bar, so we'll go there, we'll get some food, we'll keep drinking, and for the entire night. And then you go on the show floor the next day, and you repeat the entire process, and you don't sleep very much, and by the end of it, you are exhausted, hungover, and feeling miserable, but like you got a lot of good business done. And I would look around, and all of my peers are behaving this exact same way. And, I'm not puking, because, surprisingly, I held my liquor in terms of, like, I never threw up. I just didn't. I just refused to. I ticked the boxes for every other typical symptom of being an alcoholic, but I never puked. So that was, like, one way that I was like, look, I'm not causing a scene. I'm not puking.
I can handle it.
Exactly. I can handle it. Everybody else is doing the exact same thing.
Right.
But, it's... So long story short, though, I think for me, addiction is not even when something has like a detriment to your life, because it's like I was still my career was going well. It never affected things like that. So I was lying to myself and telling myself that I was fine. So I consider addiction to be just like insanity. They say insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. I think addiction is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting this time it'll be different. And by that, I mean, I have this, every alcoholic I've spoken to has almost the exact same kind of feelings toward drinking, in terms of every time I went out, it was going to be, this is going to be the best night ever. Like I'm going to, it's going to be like in the movies, where that magical thing happens, and you're going to have the best night of your life, and it's going to be so fun. A few ruckuses might occur, but it'll be an adventure overall, and it'll be so much fun, and you get dressed up. And then, like, it's just very disappointing, or it's terrible. And yet you keep doing it over and over again, expecting, well, this time it'll be different. Like, this time I'll have that magical, romantic night, and then it just never fucking happens. So... Interesting. And yet I kept doing it, so...
And it's interesting that you mentioned, like, the culture that is created for the job that you're in. So it's not even, like, an option for you to be like, no, I'm good. Like... to have a drink with someone, that's when you exchange the business cards. It's like built into your job almost. So you can't you can't be that person who's like, no, I'm not going to drink, or like, sorry, I don't do that.
Yeah, and I learned to be that person, but it was really tough at first.
Yeah.
Because, I remember like very early on, I remember going to this event like 6 months after I had stopped drinking, and I was talking with someone that I have known for a while and have probably drunk with this person before, and they're like, oh, can I get you a drink? And I'm like, oh no thanks, I actually stopped drinking, etc. And I think the first thing I said, oh no thanks, I actually stopped drinking. And they go, oh well, I won't hold that against you. And I'm like thinking, like, I'm not apologizing.
Yeah, that shouldn't really be a...
Of course you won't hold it against me. I'm not offering that as an option.
It's a lifestyle choice. What the? It's like those people who you're like, I've quit X bad habit, and they're just like, oh, you've changed. Like, they hold it against you for being better or bettering your life for yourself. It's so confusing.
Yeah. Sure. And it's so weird because this was a normally like kind person. I think that this person felt a little awkward and caught off guard. And so that's the other thing that happens. Yeah, that's the weird thing.
Gotcha.
I wasn't expecting that response from this person.
Right.
And it does, it obviously, like, the response did bother me, but like, yeah, it was because it was weird.
Hell yeah, I'd be bothered.
People have been really like kind and supportive and stuff. And again, this was a person that's normally pretty kind to me. So, but yeah, I think the other thing that I've noticed that happens a lot of times when you tell someone they stop drinking is like they feel like they need to defend their drinking. And like, I
Oh.
say, I go like, they, maybe it's someone I haven't seen in a while, or maybe it's the first time I'm meeting them. Regardless, it comes up, and I go, oh yeah, I don't drink. Oh, why not? Oh, I'm actually an alcoholic. Quit drinking a couple years ago. And they go, oh, good for you. I don't drink that much myself. It's maybe on the weekends. What I really like is bourbon. Like when you're with your friends, you gotta have some tequila. But
Oh my
it's not like I go
God.
crazy every weekend. And I'm sitting here drinking my Sprite. Like, what the fuck?
You're like,
did
you
I
just
have?
made it a thing, and it wasn't a thing. Like, I'm good.
And I'm just like, oh, good for you. I didn't ask that, but that's if you need to defend your own.
Right, like,
drink,
great.
you're-
That's
Yeah.
awesome. I've kind of faced the same thing when so I don't drink because it's a personal choice, and it's also part of my religion, but it grew into more of a personal choice. So growing up, it was like, oh, my religion says I shouldn't drink. I'm just not going to drink. And then I grew up and I was like, it's actually a personal choice too. And when I tell people like, oh, no, I don't drink, I get that same thing as well. They feel the need to defend it. And I was like, you're good. Like, I'm not judging you in any type of way. Like, that's your life. You do your thing, right?
Yeah, I'm like, your drinking doesn't affect me. Mine
Right.
does. That's why I stopped, but I don't care what you do.
Right. I mean, the only judging I'm doing is if you can't handle and then you act a fool. That's when I do judge you, right?
Yeah.
So thank you for that. I appreciate that, Jess. Subby, what do you think is an addiction?
Well, I mean, Jess and DJB both kind of nailed it, and from my perspective, it was all about, I think a lot of us develop that image mostly because of media or other influences. Whether it's a parent or someone we look up to. If they're providing you that guidance, they want to see you not become whatever it is. So they'll you hear, and especially in schools too. They're teaching kids young. To stay away from drugs, know your limits, all this stuff. But I don't think none of us can really realize truly like the line between a habit and something that's actually becoming an issue until we get to that point, until we have that decision to make. And so for me, from my experience, I always viewed myself as someone that kind of got caught with continual behavior, whether it was playing video games, whether it was, staying up too late, not being able to shut off Netflix. And then, as I became an adult, it got to the point where for my struggle with tobacco, for the longest time, I was telling myself, oh, this is just something that I truly enjoy, but it's not a problem. I can cut myself off at any time. And then there was a realization that, hey, this compulsion, and to me, addiction comes a lot with procedure and compulsion. So like the habits, the continual habit of doing something or craving something, that being more the procedural side, and then the compulsion, if I'm craving a drink, if I'm craving a smoke, if I'm craving, not being able, going out every single night with my friends, that's, when compulsion becomes something that you cannot control, that loss of control, I feel, has a lot to do with addiction, because you can have certain behaviors, and if you can control them, that's a different story. But it's that moment when you lose control of your ability to cut yourself off, to stop whatever you're doing. To me, it's that loss of control that really kind of defines addiction in my eyes.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. So I watched a movie called Addiction. I think it's called Addiction, a while back, and it was my first kind of look into a sex addict's life. And this is something a lot of people don't talk about. People joke around about all this. When you have high libido, they're like, oh, you're a sex addict, this and this. It's actually a crippling addiction, just like any other addiction. It totally can destroy your life. And in the movie, that's kind of the differentiation she had to like understand, that first it was just like, I just enjoy a lot of sex, and that's completely fine, that do your thing. But then it was actually like affecting her ability to just carry on her day. She'd be like in the middle of work and she couldn't focus because she would just like need to get a fix. She would like just need to go to anyone really. And so I like that distinction that you made. It could, when it turns from a habit to like a compulsion that you cannot control, that's when you're like, okay, I have a problem. Like, this is an actual problem. So thank you guys. All right, I'm gonna go on to, now that we've established what we think are what are addictions in our eyes. When did you guys realize that it wasn't just a habit and it was, that compulsion was there and you weren't able to control it? When did you realize that, okay, I have a problem? And Jess, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, totally. So that is like kind of going back to what I was saying before about like how I felt almost enabled by the industry that I was in. That was a tough thing for me to discover because, I didn't ever view it as an addiction.
Oh,
like I never
okay.
I never viewed my drinking as a problem because I was like, I just like to drink, it's a hobby of mine. It's fun to do. I really enjoy it. Like I never thought that it was an addiction until like, and even like right up to the end, it was, I almost had to look at it a different way. Like I guess kind of the way I got sober was I was between seasons. I was hosting for Call of Duty at the time, and it was between seasons, and I like already had my contract for the next season, and so I just had these like, but it was the off season, so I had like 3 months where I just like, I literally had no responsibilities because like I had finished up work for the year, and I just had to wait, play some video games, and like drink until the next season began, and for some reason though, I felt just like miserable. I just like was unhappy. And part of it was I had just gone through a breakup of a relationship. And so I kind of blamed that.
Right.
And like, I was just like, oh, well, that's why I'm unhappy. And, that's like, it was and ironically though, like one of the reasons we broke up was because my fiance at the time had told me that, you're an alcoholic. You need to stop drinking. You need to go to AA. You need to go to rehab. And like, he was the only person in my life that told me that, though. Literally every single other person. And it's so funny because then, like, I would complain to my friends about it. And my friends, like, some of my friends wanting to be supportive, like, not very many. I remember calling up one of my friends in particular. And it's hilarious in hindsight what he said, because I'm like, oh, yeah, like, we ended up breaking up. And, here's why. Like, he thought I was an alcoholic, et cetera, et cetera. And my friend goes, oh, my God, Jess, like, I've been drunk with you hundreds of times. You're not an alcoholic. And now I'm kind of thinking like, why don't you repeat what you just said? You've been drunk with me hundreds of times and you don't think I have a problem? I'm okay to continue doing that? I remember one night when that same friend, this was years and years ago because it's one of my college buddies. So this was like, I think while we were in college or just after. So this was like literally 10 or 12 years ago at this point. We were coming back from going skiing because there's a skiing place that's like, it's like 40-minute drive. And, we'd gone skiing afterwards. We'd gone to the lodge and had a lot to drink.
Oh, man.
And so my friend was probably not super okay to drive, but they were driving anyway. And I was like blackout, passed out, like in the passenger seat. Apparently, we got pulled over. And it ended up being fine because like at one point, and again, I'm blacked out. I don't remember any of this except for my friend telling me like much after the fact that like apparently when we got pulled over, that was the moment that I kind of woke up and was like, hi, officer, I've been drinking. Apparently is what I said.
Well, if he didn't know before, he knows now.
Points for honesty or something.
Right.
My friend told me later that they think that like, oh, that actually might have kept me from like, getting a DUI because then, it looks like, oh, it's your friend. The sober one is driving.
Right.
You're, completely wasted.
Oh
so
my God, that's
good job. You didn't let her
terrifying.
drive. Good job. You're the person driving. And I don't know if that's true or not. Cause again, I have no knowledge of this. Like I remember my friend telling me this like 5 years later, and they were like, oh yeah, I was actually a little bit mad at you for that. And I'm like, I'm really sorry. I have no memory of that. Like,
I'm sorry for what I don't remember.
Yeah. I was like, it's understandable that you would be mad, like, but yeah.
God.
So I'm just kind of like, so I think about those things and I'm like, it's nice that my friend was trying to tell me that they didn't think that I was an alcoholic, but like, I went through that experience with that person.
Yeah.
Should have thought. So it's things like that. Like I had a lot of friends that similar, like that accidentally enabled me because of that, because while I was actively still drinking, like I said, the only person that ever told me was like at the time, my fiance, the only person that said like, you're an alcoholic, get help.
Mm-hmm.
At least he planted that idea in my head. So.
And because you didn't see it as a problem, that's why you were like, you sound maybe you said something like you're crazy, like that doesn't make sense to me.
And we had so many other problems in the
Right.
relationship, and he was like kind of mean to me in a lot of ways. So I honestly just saw it as him being mean. I just thought like he's just trying to control me.
Gotcha. Right. That's why it planted the seed, but you weren't like, oh my God, he's right. Like, why would he say this if he didn't, like, you're doubting so many other things at the same time. Yeah.
The other thing was he did gaslight me in some ways, and he also like said some other things to me that were explicitly like mean and also not true. So after the fact, I just lumped it all together, and I'm like, see, that part wasn't true. That part wasn't true. Like he was flinging accusations like at me. Like he goes, you have no friends. You don't know how to be social. You're on the verge of ruining your career. And like a couple other things, all of which were like not even remotely true. And so it was just a really weird like, okay, well, if you're lying about these three things, then, you know, you must be lying about the alcoholism as well. Right. It just must be because you see that we're breaking up and you're unhappy about it, so you're lashing out and you want to hurt me. It's like how I saw it.
Exactly. Exactly. Right. And that's why you wouldn't even come across to anyone as an actual point of like, I should look deeper into what this person is saying. There might be some truth to it.
Validity to like the
everything else that they said. Yeah,
or anything else. So I'm just like, okay, well, like, yeah.
God, well, I'm glad that chapter of your life is done. I'm sure it was really painful and it was really difficult, and I'm really proud of you for all the progress that you've made. Or if you're still healing and dealing with that, I pray that you have peace and happiness in your life, for real.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Jess. What about you, Subby? How did you know, or at what point did it hit you that I think this is more than just a habit?
Well, for a long time, I was, just trying to convince myself that for me, so my biggest issue was chewing tobacco. And so for the longest time, I was just trying to convince myself, like, yes, this was a habit, like, yes, this was a behavior, but it would, I kept telling myself if I wanted to stop tomorrow, I could, throw out what I had and just move on with my life.
If you don't mind explaining what is chewing tobacco, like how does someone get tobacco and chew it? Because I've only seen, I think, tobacco in cigarettes.
Yeah, so the tobacco leaf is produced in different ways.
Okay.
Obviously, in cigarettes, it's compacted into an actual cigarette. For chewing tobacco, oftentimes the leaf itself is shredded and then processed in a way that it's just like really fine. So the common behavior is to you'll buy a tin of it and you'll take a pinch and you'll just put it between your cheek and your gum, and you'll just keep it in your mouth. And so instead of the act of physically smoking a cigarette, just holding the tobacco particles in your mouth will give you that same feeling, that same kind of release that you get from tobacco in other forms. So that was my biggest challenge. But so for several years, I kept telling myself, this is a habit I can stop at any time. I don't want to, but if I needed to tomorrow, I could throw everything else I had away and just move on. And then it got to the point where I was in my technical training. So I was in the military for 4 years in the Navy. And there was a moment in my technical training where it's almost alarming how many people in the military either smoke or chew tobacco. I know the common stereotype is that everyone in the Navy, sailors drink a lot, but also a lot of the work we do can be tedious when we're on watch or working. So a lot of the times people choose to go to cigarettes or chewing tobacco to just pass some time, and that's what it was for me. It was just a time passing thing.
In the military?
And then, in the military. Yeah. And then it got to the point where I used to start saving the little tins of tobacco after I finished one, and I started stacking them up in my closet, just as for no other reason, just to keep all the collection I had. And then one day, they all spilled, and about 300 containers, old containers of tobacco just dumped out of my closet. And I kind of looked down and I was like,
I had no idea it was that many.
I had no idea it had been
Oh
that
my
many.
goodness.
And obviously with tobacco, it can have a lot of negative health effects. And for the longest time, I just kept ignoring those. It's a habit. I'm still young. You hear about people in their 40s and 50s and 60s with lung problems and stuff. And I was like, I'm 22. I'm young. Like, I'll be okay.
Yeah.
And then it just kind of hit me like a brick wall. I looked down and I was like, man, like, I am not treating my body very well. And then the next week I went out and I tried to go a week without it. And I caught myself one day getting done from work, and I was like, I gotta go to the gas station. I crave, like, my body physically craves this right now.
Wow.
I cannot go take off my work clothes, go sit down, relax, and watch TV without having something active and consuming my body. So for me, it was kind of a realization. And it took me, many years after that realization to actually to break that. But for me, I'd spent about 4 years on tobacco, kind of just trying to ignore the signs that it was something that my body was physically relying on in order to be comfortable. And so it kind of hit me all at once in that moment that I had an addiction.
Crazy. It kind of makes you realize or think about, what if you hadn't collected the containers? How long would it have taken you then to kind of get hit by that,
Yeah, I honestly, I have no idea, because there was obviously a physical thing right in front of me that I
it's
could look down and
visible.
see, hey, this is, and it's, depending on where you live, it's also not a cheap habit. It's $10 for me where I was living. It was $10 for every tin that I bought. So hundreds, thousands of dollars I'd spent.
Goodness, wow.
And at the time, I was like, oh, $10 here, $10 there, not that big a deal. But then, when you add it all up, it's definitely a pretty whopping number too.
Goodness, yeah.
So.
And it also shows you how easily it can go unnoticed. Like, if you're not collecting the tins, you're just kind of running through bottles, or you're running through tins in your case.
Yep.
Thank you for sharing that. How about you, DJB? When did you know, or at one point did you know that you were addicted?
My addiction was opiates, painkillers. And I guess it's important to mention that I grew up in a hood city, like in California. It was the high school I went to. It was rough. It was, at the time at least, it was one of the worst high schools in the state. There were gangs, violence. I knew a lot of people that were into drugs, that were taking drugs for the first time, and as early as like 9th grade and stuff.
It was like the norm.
Sure, but I came out of that high school never using drugs. I considered myself fortunate, but now I consider myself fortunate. But at the time, I think I felt like, oh, I'm impervious to the allure of drugs. That's what I thought. And I have chronic pain. I suffer from arthritis, a type of arthritis, and so to treat a really bad episode that I had, the doctors gave me Vicodin, and I guess I realized fairly quickly that when I didn't take, so I was taking it, right, and I was taking it regularly because I was in constant pain regularly.
Yeah.
My arthritis untreated can be so bad that like I literally can't walk on my 2 feet.
Oh my God.
So I was constantly taking pain medications, and it used to be just for the relief of the pain. Vicodin, they mix hydrocodone with acetaminophen, which is basically Tylenol, and you can take that every 4-6 hours, it usually says. So that's what I would do. I would realize, I would like look at the clock and I would count the time, and I would be like, how long until my next pill? or how long has it been since my last pill? Am I feeling anything? Am I feeling any relief? And after a while, I realized, I would get withdrawals if I would wait longer than 4 or 5 hours. And so physically, I could tell that my body had a dependency on the medication or the opiates. But mentally, it took me longer to acknowledge that it was an addiction.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So, and I guess a lot of it too was because I was getting the pills legally through a doctor, and it was to treat an actual condition. I felt like it was justified. Even though I had a dependency on it, it was okay because I'm doing it through the right channels. I'm not doing anything illegal. And I figured, even if I was gaining this dependency on it, it was better than just constant chronic pain, nonstop, with literally otherwise. So yeah, and I eventually I started because your body develops a tolerance to the medication, right? You have to take more and more to feel that relief again. So I went from 1 pill at a time to 2 pills at a time. And once that stopped working, I went to my doctor and I'm like, you know what? The Vicodin's not working for me anymore. And so the doctor was like, okay, well then we'll move you to Norco. Norco is, so Vicodin has 5 milligrams of hydrocodone. Norco has 10 milligrams of hydrocodone.
Oh my goodness.
And less acetaminophen.
Okay.
So that means that technically you can take more Norco and get more hydrocodone, which is the the stuff that makes you feel warm and fuzzy. And so basically, if Vicodin are Oreos, Norco is double stuff Oreos.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So and so yeah, so I was taking Norco. I was moving up to three pills every dose, which is insane.
That is insane.
I don't think people should do that. So that's basically like taking 3 Tylenols, every 4 hours. And imagine the damage that does to your liver and stuff like that. So, but yeah, I guess I noticed as I ramped it up, I noticed the withdrawals would just get worse and worse. And constantly for it was at least I was on that for about 6 months, and I realized every day I was just looking at the clock, how long to my next pill, how long to my next pill. I would get anxiety over going out because I would always think how long am I going to be out? Do I need to take my pills with me? Because if I'm out, say I'm out for an event, I go to a party and
you
it
miss
lasts
your
8
dose.
hours.
Yeah.
I need, if 4 hours into that party, if I don't have my pills with me, I'm going to be useless. And the withdrawals are terrible from opiate addiction, because it's imagine being, at least for me, it was being so tired that you can't even sleep. You're so exhausted that you're yawning every few seconds. Your body doesn't want to move. You feel useless. You can't. It's a terrible state that you can't even sleep because you're that tired. So after that, I went back to my doctor again. I said, what, the Norco isn't even enough for me anymore.
God.
And so the doctor moved me to Percocet, and I was on that for a while. I guess I realized that the addiction was, okay, he keeps giving me more medication. I'm dependent on the doctor to give me this medication. And there were times when he would be like, it's too early, you're taking too many pills at once. And I would think of excuses to be well, maybe I lost a few pills here and there, or I would be like, well, I was in a lot of significant pain this past month, so
That's why I
could we
took
get like
extra
a
or
sooner
something.
dosage,
Oh,
you
okay.
know? So, or yeah, can you like up the dosage? Can you give me more pills each bottle? And it would get that bad. And so I guess at that point I realized like I'm just developing a larger tolerance. I'm doing all this damage to my body because these pills aren't good for you. They're not meant to treat someone long term, and they're not even a cure. They're just
Like a
to manage your pain.
holdover, yeah.
Right. So at that point, that's how I realized like, I'm either going to be on this forever, or I need to acknowledge that, this is an addiction, and I need to figure out some other way of treating my pain, my chronic pain. So yeah, I mean,
That's how you realized. My God. Is that the same with alcohol, by the way? That the more you have, the more tolerance you develop? Really? Oh, man.
Yeah.
sure, yeah.
Oh, that's rough.
Yeah,
So-
and a fun fact, it's not a fun fact, but a fact about going through like alcohol addiction. And so I was not physically addicted to the point where I began to have like dangerous withdrawals, because alcohol withdrawal and opioid withdrawal are like have sometimes can be similar, but like I mean I've never gone through opioid withdrawal myself, so I can't really speak on that. And I guess I didn't really go through alcohol withdrawal either, because but the difference is with alcohol withdrawal, it's very dangerous to detox when you're not under medical supervision, because you can actually die from alcohol withdrawals. So that's why like ambulances will typically have some kind of alcohol. I don't know if it's true that it's
Oh
like
my
actual beer, but they
God.
have alcohol on hand in case they need to emergency, because like if an alcoholic quits cold turkey, like you can actually just die from the withdrawals. You just stop living, and that's only true of like alcohol. Like I think benzos maybe also, but like opiates, even though you will go through hell, you can't actually die just from the withdrawals of opiates.
Interesting. But you probably feel like it. You
feel like
probably
you want to,
feel
I'm
like you
sure.
will
I mean,
die. Yeah, 100%.
I'm sure you feel like you want to, and I'm sure you can also like become dehydrated and other things going through opioid withdrawal that that can kill you. But like it's not the withdrawal itself like it is with alcohol.
God, I didn't know that. Oh my goodness. So I know that you each have experienced it, addiction in different ways, and kind of come to that point in different ways. So I don't know if this next question will really apply to you, but the root of your addiction, did you ever figure out if it was deeper than just, for example, in Jess's case, it was the workplace that, or I guess like the lifestyle that you were living. In Subby's case, it was just you getting addicted to tobacco. Were you guys, and for you, it was mainly your pain, DJB. Was it anything deeper that you were seeking from this I guess vice, like to suppress any kind of like stress that was happening in your life, or any kind of issues that you were dealing with? Or was it mainly just like happenstance, you just ended up being in that situation and got addicted to it? Subby?
I would say in terms of nicotine and tobacco, it became habitual for me. But in terms of just in terms of those behaviors that seem unbreakable, there were definitely signs for me even before I ventured into tobacco and nicotine. Growing up, you hear about addictive personalities, and for some, that's like, oh, just like, someone can't stop impulse shopping or something else. But there's a legitimate
real,
physiological draw to that. It's not just a wives' tale of, oh, this is someone that just has tendencies that they often cling to. I firmly believe like addictive personalities, like the physiological makeup of a person can affect whether or not they have a better chance of becoming someone that becomes addicted to something. For me, growing up, so I shouldn't say obviously, because everyone grows up in different situations, but I wasn't presented alcohol or drugs growing up. But even from a case of, as a teenager, I got into video games. And it got into the point where, you know, I would come home from after school and I would hop on my Xbox and play. But then it got to the point where I was legitimately changing my behavior because I craved that activity or that habit or that behavior so much. So I would, hopefully my parents aren't listening. I would, you know, pretend I was finished with my homework. I would lie and say that I was going out with my friends, and I had a room that I could sneak back into without my parents knowing. I would say I was going out to play with my friends, and I would come home, sneak back into my room, and sit on my Xbox for 3 hours. So it became a thing where these activities and these habits became so ingrained, and that that compulsion, that lack of control, I did not have control over those behaviors and those desires. That, I mean, there were telltale signs that I become someone that you know, was had a higher chance of becoming addicted to something more detrimental. You know, playing video games too long can have effects on your health too, but, you know, not obviously like drugs, alcohol, and such.
Gambling.
Will have, and gambling
Yeah.
can have, you know, some pretty legitimate health effects on you. So for me, yeah, it was the habitual kind of seeing those signs earlier on in my life, seeing that I could not physically pull myself away from my Xbox.
Wow.
And just like
okay.
I could not physically pull myself away from nicotine, when it came down to it.
Thank you. DJB, what about you? Were there any, was it just mainly your physical pain that you were trying to relieve, or was there something else?
Yeah, well, it wasn't until much later that I saw a mental health professional, and you know, I talked about that time in my life, and you know, they helped me understand that there were signs that I was dealing with depression at the time. And a lot of it was due to my medical condition, which I got really young, like I was a teenager, and that impacted a lot of my life. And so I had to drop out of college really early on because of that condition that I had, and that affected me. You know, it affected my social life. You know, I had mentioned to my parents at one point that I felt like I didn't have any friends anymore, you know, because, you know, when you're in your early 20s, and at that time I was in my early 20s, like everyone's out, they're
Right.
partying, they're, you know, socializing, doing all this fun stuff, or even just like, you know, just having people over and stuff.
Yeah.
But, you know, I felt uncomfortable doing that because, you know, I was, most of the time I was walking around with like a cane. And, and so yeah, like I guess all that feeling on top of that, I you know, I was hospitalized for a time. um Long story short, the doctors told me that I was at risk of dying. And so at that point I was like, well, damn, like why should I care about the future then? For now, I mean, I might as well just, like, you know.
Right.
And I think I took on that like mentality for a while, you know, and that, because that affects you, you know, especially when you're
Yes.
young. And
Yes.
like a young person in the
100%.
hospital. Yeah, I thought it was just for, you know, something small, but apparently, you know. So so yeah, like so because of all that, I feel like that, you know, that added to just my mentality of yeah, I need to feel better.
Yeah.
I need to feel less of these emotions that I feel because of this, you know, all the bad things that are going on in my life, and so little good things. I might
Yeah.
as well, like, you know, take a few pills to just take the edge off.
Goodness.
and yeah, that just made things so much worse, in my opinion.
I'm so sorry to
retrospect.
hear that, DJB. And I'm so glad that you've, you know, started your own life with your partner, and, you know, you guys are, you seem like you have a very beautiful, strong relationship. So I wish you all many years of happiness and goodness, and I hope your health improves. And I know that was a really like dark chapter in your life, and you're still, you know, dealing with things, and I hope things just get better for you.
Yeah, thanks.
You're welcome. Jess, what about you? I know you said it was your workplace and the environment. Was there anything else?
Yeah, I think that like the workplace and the environment was what kept me. I don't think that's what gave me a problem, or I don't think that's why I because if it wasn't that, I would have found another excuse. I was definitely like, let me put it this way,
okay.
I was definitely an alcoholic already. You know, when I tell those stories about the game industry, I just use that to illustrate that's kind of how I justified my drinking, you know, and how I justified my addiction was because it was definitely already there.
Part of my job.
So yeah, exactly. I was like, everyone else is doing it, so clearly I don't have a problem, because if I have a problem, then all these people have a problem. I know all these people don't have a problem because I don't have a problem. But I think then the other people would not go home, you know, during the week and drink alone every night while playing video games. Maybe they did. Maybe some of them did. I'm sure, honestly, there's a lot of other alcoholics in the industry that aren't ready to stop drinking yet, but that's another story. For a number of alcoholics have this thought, because there's been like a lot of research and stuff that heavily suggests that there is a strong genetic component in alcoholism. I think it's the same for addiction, but I definitely know it's for sure for alcoholism. And you've seen that, like, it's both nature and nurture. I think it in my family was, my dad's side of the family. I didn't find out until like, I think after I had stopped drinking, I found out that both of my dad's parents died of cirrhosis of the liver because of their drinking. And like, so it's like, and I didn't know that. Like, I knew that my mom, and because like growing up, my mom didn't talk about it too much, or my dad didn't talk about it either. Like my dad, I don't know. So my mom occasionally would say that my dad's an alcoholic, but I saw my dad drinking very rarely. And I saw him drunk like once or twice in my life. So it would always be confusing to me when she would say that he was an alcoholic, because I'm like, he certainly doesn't look like it, like he's an adult, he's gotten drunk twice. The one time he was just very affectionate, the other time he went upstairs and went to bed, like, that doesn't look like an alcoholic to me. So I kept like, and my mom didn't even tell me that, like, oh, well, no, like, your dad's parents both died of alcoholism. I'm kind of like, man, wish I would have known that growing up, Mom.
Right.
But it's okay. I figured it out. So there's like the strong genetic component, and there's this school of thought among a lot of alcoholics, myself included, that you are an alcoholic from the day you were born. Before you ever take your first drink, it's just kind of like the odds are stacked against you, even if you never start drinking, you have that in you. So if you ever do take a drink, it's like that'll activate it, and you'll, so and I remember like my very first drink with the same way that all alcoholics do. And I remember loving it. Like, I remember being 17 years old and I had just graduated from high school, and I drank half of Smirnoff Ice. And I just like physically, I loved that feeling. And like, so I think there was, there's a lot of, I was always going to become an alcoholic. And then I ended up having, a decent bit of trauma here and there. Nothing too heavy, nothing too major, but like a couple of relationships that ended up kind of, I feel like messing me up, on top of a natural inclination toward anxiety. I didn't get diagnosed until I was 26 with generalized anxiety disorder. And, I've never been formally diagnosed until my therapist says that she's pretty sure I have depression, but it's never been like a doctor's told me that or whatever.
Right.
So there was a whole host of like mental health complications on top of that I would self-medicate with alcohol, and so there was a lot. I think as everyone knows, like, addiction is complicated. So I think
addiction
there's always a lot of reasons. So yeah, those were some of mine.
Yeah. And when I was doing research for this talk, I was trying to see the correlation between addiction and trauma. And there was a study done by Times Magazine that said that it was like so 70% of the youth that were in rehabilitation centers had experienced some kind of trauma. And they were using, their addictions to kind of like, or the substances to cope with that trauma and deal with it. And it just makes me so sad to think that there are that many people that have experienced these terrible things in their lives. And so the only kind of peace that they can find is with these substances. And it must be such a lonely thing to go through and such a lonely process when you feel like that's what you can depend on and that's what gives you comfort and peace. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like, because it's the way that like what makes you an alcoholic is not, because the one thing that people like to ask when they, you know, find out you're an alcoholic is like, because they're curious about it, or they're trying to gauge if they are as well. They'll start asking you questions like, you know, to kind of compare. They'll go, oh, well, how often did you drink? Well, how much did you drink at a time? And I'm like, what, are you a doctor? Is this like a medical history? Because it doesn't really matter like how often I drank. It doesn't matter that like some periods of my life, because I had a 13-year-long drinking career all told, because I started drinking. I had my first drink when I was 17 years old, and then I got sober when I was 30 years old, 2 months after my 30th birthday. So like, you know, for 13 years I drank. So no, of course, like, do you think I drank a 24 pack of beer every single day for 13 years? I didn't. But there were times in my life, there would be maybe a couple weeks, a couple months where, yeah, I would drink every single day. There would be other times when I wouldn't drink during the week, but I would only drink during, you know, on the weekends.
Yeah.
And
So
it doesn't matter, like, yeah. And it doesn't matter. And every alcoholic's different. It doesn't matter what your drinking looks like. It matters like the reason that you drink and the why you drink. And I mean, it all comes down to escape
Yes.
from something is kind of the reason.
Yes. Yes, exactly. Exactly. People aren't good at talking about this stuff. Some cultures too. Oh, 100%. Mental health still isn't talked about in some cultures. It's seen as like something that only ails a certain skin color or certain, you know, part of the world. It affects everyone, really. Self-medicate. Yeah, exactly. It's tough because sheltering in place makes these things so much harder. Exactly. Social pressure is something, but professional pressure must have been another thing altogether. Yeah, exactly. And that's why I said earlier that it must have been so difficult to become that person, to be like, sorry, no, I don't do that anymore. All right, that's not what I dabble in anymore, especially in the entertainment industry.
Yeah, and then even now, so like I'm at a little bit different, you know, little bit different phase of my career that I, you know, maybe was earlier on. So I'm not doing as many of the events that you go to and you're working on the show floor. Instead, what I'm doing is like events where you're a member of a broadcast talent team, and then like at the end of the event. So which is a little easier because, you know, those guys take their job seriously, you know, we all do. And so they typically wouldn't be going, like, it'd be maybe a weekend long event. We got to be on camera for 3 days in a row. So the first 2 days, it's just, okay, you go back to your hotel room and you sleep. And it's really long days. So there just isn't really that much time and you want to be prepared and everything. But then at the final day, the third day, as soon as the broadcast wraps, everybody goes out and gets hammered, you know. And that's the kind of thing that nowadays I obviously just kind of, I bow out. I just go back to my hotel room. I play my Switch, eat some candy. You know, I have a good time anyway, but it was really tough.
Yes. I like that you said you have a good time anyway, because later on I do want to ask about like how that part of your life has changed and, you know, the stigma around it and all of that. Because there is, unfortunately. So now that we've talked about, you know, you realizing that you guys were addicted to something and what was the point, how did your addiction impact your loved ones, your career, your relationships? So I know of people who have had to like lie about their finances because so much of their money was going towards whatever substances that they were indulging in. So did you guys have any experiences with that, or was it causing a strain? I know Jess said in her instance, her fiance did bring it up, but I don't know if that was like a major point of contention. It doesn't sound like it was a major point of contention in your relationship, or was it?
It was toward the end. It
Okay.
because at first so the other thing about like alcoholics is like we always think that we can hide it and like pull a fast one on people. And so I was hiding my drinking for a very long time. And so for a while, like I don't know. So for a while he either didn't know or I thought he didn't even know. And then when he found out, like it became a whole thing. It became a, you know, big problem.
How did he find out?
Like one night I was like passed out and he said that I had like been acting really weird. And, you know, of course I don't remember any of this. He like, apparently he like went through, he knew I was like, he knew something was wrong or something. I was acting really, really weird. And he knew I was like doing something. He suspected probably drinking. So he like went through my stuff and he, you know, found empty bottle of vodka that I had stashed away. And he was like, oh, all those nights that she was acting weird and blaming it on, oh, I'm just anxious, she was actually drunk. So, yeah. So it was a whole, yeah, that's when it really, really especially became a thing. And like I had said, like we'd had major other problems in the relationship before that. So again, I still never saw it as a problem, even though it was, and that was the only area of my life that it really affected. Like, I'm sure that I was not a very good friend to some of my friends. I'm sure that I was a much more selfish person. But overall, I really tried to compartmentalize and contain it and be like, all right, well, it's not going to affect my work. And it didn't. It really had no, and that again kept me drinking for so much longer than I should have, just because it didn't have any other effect on my life except for my relationship with my fiance. So
interesting. Wow. Okay. Because usually, in movies you see they completely, again, the conception or the image we're given of addicts is their life falls apart. They lose their partner, they lose their friends, they lose their job, they lose everything. And I'm not saying that that's not accurate. I'm saying that that's not the only story. There are many other stories out there. Sub, what about you?
For me, it was a lot about hiding my habits and my behavior. While I was in the Navy, it wasn't nearly as big a deal, just because the whole environment kind of cultivated that in the first place. But anytime I would be visiting home or around my non-military friends, chewing tobacco, it's kind of a dirty habit. You're spitting into bottles, you're spitting on the ground, wherever. And so for me, I knew it wasn't something that I was necessarily proud of. Obviously, I knew it was a habit I had.
Oh, wait, we lost you. Sorry, you said you knew it was a habit you had, but?
I knew it was a habit I had, but I wasn't able to stop it, or control that behavior. So for me, it was all about trying to mask it from those that didn't know about it. Because again, I didn't want to be seen as that guy that's just going through. I was at that time in my life, I was going through about a tin a day.
Oh my god. Yeah. Oh my goodness.
So
wow.
That would be the first thing before I even brushed my teeth in the morning. As soon as I got out of bed, I would put in the chew. Throughout my day, I would be chewing out pretty much all day long. So it got to the point where I was trying to hide it from everyone I knew, and then because it was it's not a healthy habit. I moved back in with my parents after I got out of the military, and they weren't big fans of the fact that I was doing it, so they really pushed me to stop, and basically didn't, as long as I was living under the house. So then there was times where I was hiding tins under my mattress, or stuffing them in socks in my dresser drawers, or just doing anything that I could to try to hide the fact that I was doing it. And I was doing it a lot indoors, and so I would have empty water bottles that I would spit the tobacco juice into, and those are all brown and disgusting, but I would stuff them in backpacks in my closet, and then when my parents were gone, I would run them out to the dumpster, and stash them 3 layers deep in my garbage. So it became something that I was trying so hard to let other people see, because it wasn't something I was proud of. And I didn't quit until January of 2020. And so at that point, I had been working as a sports broadcaster. So another thing I was doing was, as soon as I would go out, I would call a basketball game for 3 hours. First thing I did when I got in the door, getting home, is I would put in a chew. And obviously the biggest thing with chewing tobacco is the risk of throat cancer. Smoking's a lot of lung cancer because it gets in your system that way. But for chewing tobacco, it's all in your mouth, and in your throat. So for the longest time, again, I was just neglecting the impact that it would have on me. And then that also was kind of a reason why I stopped. I was like, hey, if I want to be able to call touchdown Ravens, 20, 30 years of my life. Like I can't be risking losing the ability to talk.
God, that's terrifying.
But yeah, for me, it was all about trying to hide my behavior at all costs, which was really just detrimental to both my physical and mental health too. Just the anxiety of, hey, is my mom gonna find a tin in my room? Is my roommate gonna see 4 dirty water bottles lying around? That kind of thing.
And what's interesting about chewing tobacco, from what I'm listening, is that it seems slightly easier to hide that than, for example, being addicted to actually smoking. There's no odor. It's a very private and personal thing that's happening. And the only proof, I guess, is the residue that you got to spit out, and where you're going to keep it, where you're going to toss it out. So you can really get away with that for quite some time.
Yep, and I went back to school too after I got out of the military, and so I would take tobacco with me to class, and then I would take either a dark water bottle or I would literally go to the gas station, buy an A&W root beer bottle just because the bottle itself is brown. So I would take that to class with me, and I would sneakily just spit back out into it, and would hope that no one would suspect that a root beer bottle is actually not root beer.
Wow.
So.
That's really interesting. Thank you. DJB, what about you?
Yeah, well, it's funny, Sylvia. I went to a bachelor weekend for my friend, and they were chewing a lot of tobacco. And one of my biggest fears was picking up a glass.
Oh,
It was iced tea.
oh.
Drinking it. I would see them all lying around. There were just glasses of iced tea.
You're like, oh, this is textured.
Yeah.
That would not be good.
No, not at all.
You didn't take the pulp out of this iced tea.
Yeah, right? Wow, it's au
right,
natural.
Make sure when you've touched the glass, it's cold. So
Yeah.
if it's not, it's probably
Yeah.
too much chewing tobacco. But, yeah. Well, for me, I never, at the time that I was going through the opiate addiction, I never really confided with anybody. I never told anybody because I think I was still coming to terms with acknowledging that it was an addiction personally. But I know that I definitely didn't tell my parents because I was living with my parents at the time, and to them it was just more medicine. It was medication that I needed from the doctor.
Yeah.
So there would be times though that I would ask my dad to go to the pharmacy to get my refills, and that usually implied tell them you're me. When he would do that, he would also pay for the pills and stuff like that. So yeah, I guess in some ways that helped me also feel better about getting the medication. And let me clarify that I the medical condition that I was going through, I was trying different treatments, and I finally found one that treated my symptoms fairly well, but I maintained taking the opiates even though I didn't need to for about another year after that. Because I was
Wow.
even though I didn't need to take the pain medication anymore, I was still addicted to it. I couldn't kick the habit. So I was on that for another year, and around that time I had started dating my wife now. We had just started dating, and I know that first year of us dating, I was still addicted to the opiates, and I kept it really well hidden from her. I would, I would just say, that's my medicine, and if I would go out, I would be like, hey, can you keep my pills in your purse or something like that?
Okay.
And if I was experiencing withdrawals, I would just say things like, I'm feeling groggy, I'm feeling burnt out. What could mean anything. She knew I was a gamer.
Exactly.
And gamers have terrible sleeping schedules, right?
Exactly.
So I think she just probably assumed that I wasn't sleeping properly, which I wasn't sleeping properly either, of course.
Yeah.
But yeah, most of the time it was I was feeling withdrawals. I was so So I knew that was affecting our relationship, and I didn't want it to affect it worse
Yeah,
and
yeah.
more, so thankfully, I was able to kick the habit that first year, but it did take me a year to to get myself off of the medication, to get myself off of the opiates, even though I didn't need them. So
Yeah, good job. Good job. I actually, talking about relationships kind of made me think about something. So, Jess mentioned something that she's like, when her and her partner were going through a breakup, and she said that she, didn't believe him because they're going through a breakup and he's maybe trying to say something to hurt her. And it made me think of being in a relationship with someone. So, for example, being in a relationship with Jess now, or Subby, or DJB, if your partner kind of brought up that chapter of your life to use it against you, or to kind of, I guess point out like, oh, you were so weak at one time, you did this and this and this. Is that sort of like a don't touch that kind of chapter in my life? That's a very personal hurdle that I have like overcome, and like, why are you bringing that up? Or is it like, does it fire you up extra because it was a dark chapter in your life, you've dealt with it, or you are dealing with it, and does that kind of escalate that situation to like a make it or break it for a relationship because they've like touched something so personal?
That's a good question. Like, so like in my case, are you asking are you asking like if my current partner brought it up, or do
Yeah.
you mean like oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, because nowadays, like, I have spoken to my current partner, like I stopped drinking like a week after I met him, so we were like very casually dating, and then I stopped drinking, and then I had to I had this decision of like, oh my gosh, I have to tell this guy that I just started dating, like, hey, by the way, I stopped drinking because I'm an alcoholic. I know that's
Right.
a lot to put on a guy that I've been seeing for a week. We've had like 2 dates. But like, he and I speak a lot about it. He doesn't really, he's like, I mean, he certainly would never bring it up to be like, oh, you were so weak, like in a negative way. Cause like,
Yeah.
that would be very hurtful. And that would make me go like, oh, I don't think you're the right person for
Right.
me,
Right.
So fortunately, like he says the opposite. He's like, oh my gosh, you're so strong, and I'm so proud of you for getting sober. And he's like incredibly supportive, and if there's ever like, like he's just really, he's really great. So.
Yay. I'm so happy for you. Because, in relationships, there's always those things that you're like, that's a make it or break it topic. Like, you just don't go there. And if you do, it makes me question our whole relationship. So I was curious how it is from someone who has struggled in that situation, how sensitive, and how much you weigh that topic. What about you, DJB? I know like your wife would never do that, but God forbid, how important is that sort of to you?
Well, I think that for me, it's important that we could be open and honest about that, and honest how we feel about the whole thing. And so, if she were to want to discuss with me about that situation, that time period, that addiction that I had, I feel like I would be open to discussing it, and I would hope that. At least personally for me, I would hope that she wouldn't want to be like, no, I don't want to hear about that. I don't want to hear about your addiction.
Or bring it up in a negative way, to bring it to like attack you in some kind of way.
Yeah. I thankfully she's very understanding and has not done that, and so I think that that would be difficult. I'm thankful that I haven't experienced that in our relationship.
Nice. What about you, Subby?
For me, because it was for the longest time, it was something that I was so ashamed of even admitting or allowing other people to see. It's become something that I don't necessarily openly acknowledge that it was a really negative part of my life, but when the topic comes up, it's something that I do like to talk about, and I don't mind discussing it now. The fact that it was something that controlled my life for the better part of 6 years, and just the impact it had, again, physically and mentally on me, just for such a long time.
Yeah.
But it's become something that I'm definitely starting to open up more about, and I think a big part of me too, just acknowledging issues, was this past year. I also opened up about my mental health for the first time ever. Before I had talked to my family or friends, it was in July I opened up about my mental health to my Twitch community, and I realized that, hey, having a discussion about something difficult is only going to be a benefit. And from that point on, that's when I started telling people, hey, I've had this issue, but let's open up a discussion about it. And the same thing too with my addiction to nicotine. It's not something that I'm not even 100% over. I'm still a current nicotine user, but from a tobacco standpoint and the effect that that's had on my health, that's why I've definitely feel like I've crossed that bridge to the point where I'm not ashamed about talking about it. And like I said, I'm still a current nicotine user, so I'm not out of the woods completely. But because it's something that I finally identified and was willing to acknowledge on a personal level, it made me more inclined to acknowledge it and discuss it openly, I would say.
Okay. Thank you, guys. What kind of stigmas do you think are attached to addiction? So I know that there are those heavily cultural ones in parts of the world where addiction is not really talked about openly. So like, if you're an addict, you're automatically a bad person. It must mean you're a bad person, or you're corrupt, or there's something wrong with you, or you're damaged, or you're broken. And although we have established that there is a correlation between trauma and addiction, it does not automatically mean that because you're an addict, you're broken as a person. I also think that the stigma that's also attached to recovery is that you are suddenly not fun anymore. Like that somehow makes you a boring person or straight edged, which I think is completely incorrect. And I could be completely biased because I am straight edged and I haven't really experienced any of that. I don't think I'm like totally not fun. I don't think that's what makes you a fun person, to be honest. I don't think dabbling in drugs and tobacco and alcohol is what makes you a fun person. I think your vices or things that you enjoy or experience in terms of substances is not equivalent to your personality. Your personality and the things that you the substances that you take are two separate entities, in my opinion. And too often they're equated to be the same. Like your character is judged by the substances that you use. What other stigmas do you think are attached to addiction or your specific addiction that you've experienced? Subby, what do you think?
Well, for me, it was, at least with tobacco, I would say tobacco is I mean, to a lesser extent than some harder drugs, but tobacco itself is I would say commonly viewed as kind of a dirty habit. It's there's millions of people that will smoke a cigarette or do that. So it's become customary in society, but at the same time, you get a lot of people, oh, that person smells like cigarette smoke or the such. So for me, that was a big reason of why I was trying to hide it for so long. Just the stigma associated specifically with chewing tobacco is it's a dirty habit. You're spitting in bottles. You're creating a mess. You're tearing up your mouth. I would say though more in general, I think a huge stigma is around with any addiction that people view it as a weakness or in some way or another, because you can't control your behavior, you're a lesser person. And that's really hard to overcome.
It is.
Mentally, because society has glorified through TVs and movies and even real life. Like there's documentaries out there of people struggling with serious addictions, and sometimes they paint it in a way that these people are beyond the level of humanity, or they're a lesser person because they can't pull themselves from this. And while it is a struggle, these are all real people.
Yeah.
I'm other than being a dirty tobacco user. I was still a guy that was working, was going to school, had a social life, and just had all those other components of other than this one habit to break. So I think too often people get classified by their addiction.
Yes.
Whether it be drugs or alcohol or certain behaviors, and that one, that's not fair to that person, and two, that's become something that's been built through years and years, again through media and society, that it makes it that much more difficult as well. I feel that's another reason why a lot of people struggle with addiction, is not only do they have this issue, this behavioral pattern that they struggle with breaking, it's then the mass of judgment they fear,
Oh my
anxiety
God,
they fear
yes.
from everyone else looking down upon them because they drink, because they smoke, because et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So
Yeah, and I think people also forget, especially people who have not experienced addiction themselves, they forget how easy it is to become addicted to like anything really. So this was like my taste of I can't even call it an addiction, but it was my taste of like the literal like pebble on the path of addiction. And I was like, whoa, this is so easy. So for Christmas, like 10 years ago, my workplace gave me a lottery ticket. And it was one of those cute $1 little tickets. And I was like, oh, I've never, because in for those of you who don't know, in Islam, gambling is not allowed. So I had never, done the lottery. I had never done these scratch to win tickets, but I was like, you know what? It's in the workplace. It was given. It's got like cute little Santa Claus stuff on it. It's not bad. Easy peasy, shampoo squeezy. Let me do a little scratcheroo. And I ended up winning. And I was like, ooh, I just got $1 back. Cool. I'm going to go get another one. And I got another ticket and I didn't win. And I was like, ooh, I didn't win. But like, I could really use that like $5 or $2, whatever I end up getting from that ticket. It was really small numbers. It wasn't those big ones. And I ended up going a couple of times back into the store, and what started as something that was completely free and a gift, I ended up spending like $5 on it. And then I caught myself and I was like, hold on 1 second. What is happening right now? What is happening? This is a very slippery slope, very slippery. And I kept justifying that, it's only $1. The ticket's only $1. It's like not that big of a deal. And then I started looking at the other tickets that were there too. And I was like, oh, but that one has a bigger prize. And luckily I caught myself. But that's how slippery it is. It's simple as that. It doesn't always have to be like these dramatic stories that happen in movies and media. It can be as simple as that. That could have easily turned into something like life-shattering, especially if you yourself are facing financial problems and issues. I know gambling is something that we're not talking about today, but it is a reality. And unfortunately, a very sad reality that a lot of these corporations prey on. That's the kind of world that we live in. And it's so easy. It's so easy to just be constantly, kind of like what Jess was saying, like you keep thinking the next time's going to be better. The next time's going to be better. Like the next machine is going to be the win. The next game is going to be the win when you go to these casinos. And then before you know it, you've spent $400, $600, $800,000 just like that, completely out of your budget as well. So it's pretty scary. I really like the things that you mentioned, Subby, about the stigma attached to it. It's like you're not even treated as a person anymore, and all those traits of you as a human are taken away from you just because you have this addiction, right? What about you, DJB? What do you think are some of the stigma attached to it?
To addiction, I would say people look at addiction as a weakness. You know, they look at people
Yes.
who are suffering from addiction as yeah, they don't have self-control. You know, they don't care about their own health, or they don't care about their bodies, or
Right.
as far as like specifically opioid addiction, I think, at least for me, when I always heard about people that were like on Vicodin and stuff like that, I always thought those are like that's the drug for like the middle class people, like the people who I don't know, who have
the higher
who have
end
a good life
bit,
but
yeah.
can't acknowledge that they have a decent life, who
Oh,
have nice
man.
things. But I guess that was always my impression of like people who were suffering from opiates. I don't know if that anyone relates to that, but yeah, I mean,
But it is interesting that you mentioned that, because I think, is it Rizaline or Rizaline?
Rizaline. Yeah.
Rizaline. So Rizaline mentioned before that she said that she attributed addictions mainly to like lower class and people who are impoverished or they're struggling financially. And it's interesting that that's the narrative that's pushed forward, but it really affects all classes. It's really anyone.
Yeah, one of the warnings that one of my doctors mentioned to me about like opioid addiction, because they realized I was taking a lot of it, is, you know, that a lot of celebrities are dying from these, you know, a mix of opiates and sleeping medications. You know, you look at Heath Ledger, for example.
Oh man,
Michael Jackson. You know, and so yeah, like it's I guess the stigma to opiates is that it's okay because it's given usually by a doctor, but it really isn't. It's just as dangerous, if not in some ways way more dangerous, because people think it's okay.
Yeah.
Because it's safer if you get it through the proper channels.
Yeah. I actually think someone in chat, I can't remember who it was, but they mentioned that pharmaceutical companies, again, kind of prey on people's addictions and prey on not solving the root of the problem, but kind of keeping you sick enough that you'll like keep coming back. And in some cases, people do develop addictions to which then you're recommended other probably medication, and then they're just constantly benefiting off of us, you know? Yeah, exactly. They just follow a script. Exactly. I really like what Rev Aftershock said. It really bothers me when those that have never had an addiction will say things like, I don't understand why you don't just stop. Like it's as easy as that. It's something that takes time to really deal with. I wish it was easy to deal with, but it's not. Very, very, very true. Why I firmly believe that addiction boils down to psychologists. Yeah, not just something that can be flipped off like a light switch. Exactly. And it's so, it's such an ignorant way of thinking, you know? Jess, what about you? What do you think are some of the stigmas attached to alcoholism or addictions?
I think you guys already made a lot of really good points, such as, first of all, DJB, I really liked what you said about like almost like it's more like opioid addiction is like, oh, well, it's prescribed by a doctor, you know, so it's seen as like the upper middle class addiction. And it's so funny, isn't it, how society almost seems very like understanding of an opioid addiction, because they're like, oh, well, you know, you just it's an addictive thing. It's just addictive. You can't help it. And yet when those same people, the way a heroin addiction begins is with prescription painkillers a lot of the time. And then that prescription runs out because, you know, your whatever was ailing you often. I know, you know, obviously every case is different, but a lot of times the doctor will stop prescribing something because whatever you were getting treated for has healed or, you know, is no longer an issue, but the addiction is still there. So then you turn to like heroin. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, that's, you know, you're injecting heroin. Now you're a criminal.
Gotcha.
You know?
And now you're suddenly seen as lower class because that's a more like It's for
Yeah,
poor
like
people,
rich people do
right?
pills, but they don't do like hard drugs like that, you know. And there's this hilarious joke
So interesting.
on the TV show Shameless, because Shameless, I only watched the U.S. version. I don't know about the British version, but on the U.S. version, obviously the entire plot arc is about multiple people who are addicts and alcoholics, and the main character,
Oh.
Frank Gallagher, goes through tons of different periods of addiction and alcoholism and stuff like that. And he's just the picture of denial the entire time. And at one point in the cycle, he ends up getting addicted to opioids. And then he, for some reason, like ends up, I don't know why, because, you know, he's very against rehab. In the plot, he ends up going to rehab for opioid addiction. And he's been in and out of like rehab and whatever for alcoholism and all this stuff all throughout the entire show. And then season like 8, he goes to this rehab for opioid addiction, and it's like really, really nice. And all the people there are these like upper middle class, you know, and they're like, oh, and what do you like for breakfast? You know, our chef will prepare it for you. And he's like, and he even goes like, no offense, but this is not what I expected out of rehab.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, you know, because back in the day, everyone who was addicted to, you know, crack and alcohol, it was all, you know, oh, you're a bum living on the street. And then, you know, all these like overprescription of opioid painkillers happened, and now all of a sudden it's a bunch of people who don't necessarily have that financial difficulty already, who like can pay for like a great rehab center and stuff like that. So so it really kind of fits that narrative that's so true. And then like Raven, you also hit the nail on the head about you know, people think that you're no fun once you stop drinking. And like if your entire personality is based around alcohol, you've got a drinking problem. You're not fun, you have a drinking problem.
Right.
You know what's boring? You know what's boring is listening to someone tell the same story over and over again because they don't remember they told it because they're blackout drunk. That's boring.
It actually really bothers me because I've had coworkers that will like purposely, like in the past, like either not invite me to things or will just like look at me funny when I say that, oh, I don't. And I don't make it like a lecture thing, guys. I'm not just like, because I'm not drinking, you should not drink. But they automatically look at me like, she's probably not fun. Oh, don't invite her out.
We don't want any sober Sallys judging us, bringing down
right.
the fun,
And it's like, I promise
know?
I'm not judging you. I always say this, I only judge people who like can't handle themselves. And when they act a fool and they justify bad behavior with over drinking, that pisses me off. That I disagree with, that I don't like. And like I personally don't understand the appeal in drinking, but that doesn't mean I judge people who drink. You know what I'm saying? And I wish people like gave me a chance to like explain that instead of just automatically thinking like no drinking equals not fun. Which is really a shitty thing to say, in my opinion.
And I found the people that do get, like, the people that think that you're going to judge them are doing that because they are a little self-conscious. Sorry, I have dogs.
Oh, no, it's okay.
To barking. Because, the people who are thinking that you're going to judge them are the ones that are self-conscious about their own drinking. Like, they probably, deep down, think they have a problem, or in my experience, they have a problem and they're just not willing to admit it. So they get really, you know, they prejudge you. They think that you're going to judge them because they feel like they need to be judged.
Interesting. Oh, I didn't think of that. That's interesting.
Like all my friends that have healthy relationships with drinking, they're like very supportive, you know, and they're
like, oh, I get it. Like, I totally get it. Yeah.
They don't get weird. The people that get weird are the people that I'm like, maybe you come to a meeting with me sometime.
Right.
You know?
Maybe you do need the help, actually. Do you feel that trying to hide these addictions contributed to you wanting to do them more consistently? I don't know. What do you think, guys?
At least for me, I don't know about necessarily wanting to do it more consistently, but I was definitely more methodical in the way that I did it. I put a lot more thought into day to day. Oh, you know, I'm going to class at 10 in the morning. I have work at 4. You know, I'm gonna make sure that I bring a bottle with me for my day, or something of that nature. So I wouldn't necessarily say more in my specific situation, but I definitely put a lot more thought into, okay, well, I know I have this and this going on, or I know I have friends coming over, so I'm gonna sit at the end of the couch, so that way I can lean over it and spit off to the side, and they're not even gonna notice, and something, you know, stuff like that. And with chewing tobacco, you know, it's more discreet than a cigarette, but while you have chew in your mouth, there's usually a pretty good bump. Like you'll see.
Oh,
people walking around
really?
like that.
I
But
didn't know it was
even
that much.
sometimes, if I knew I was going out in public, I was going to be chewing in a environment that I didn't want it to be noticeable, I would keep it farther back in my mouth. And it also got to a point where towards the very end, before I stopped, it was getting so bad that I would even start swallowing the tobacco juice, which is incredibly horrible for your body.
Oh man.
But instead of spitting it out, if I was going out in public, I would sneak one in, and then I would just
Swallow
they call
the
it gutting
juice.
it, gutting the tobacco juice. So I would
Oh
just,
my God.
instead of spitting out all the bad stuff in there, I would just swallow it, and so it was even less noticeable. So that was my experience with trying to be discreet about it.
Goodness. What about you guys? Did you feel like having to hide it made you do it for longer? Or not in your experience?
For me, I wouldn't say. I kind of want to piggyback off of what Subby was saying, because that is like really funny behavior that I also had the same, like, I would like try to like plan out my night of like, okay, well, so we'll have everyone meet at my place so that then we can like Uber from there together, or, like nobody has to drive, and, okay, we're going to get to this place. And, well, even I guess like further than that, to the point of like, okay, so while everyone's on their way over is when I can start pre-gaming.
Right.
And then I'll get to the bar, and like I'll already be drunk, but then everyone else will be like sipping their one beer, and I'll be having a lot of fun, even though everyone else will think I've only had one drink, but really I've been like pre-drinking ahead of time so I can keep up the buzz, like exact same kind of like, let me plan it out to make sure that I'm like constantly drunk the whole time and I don't accidentally sober up.
Yours is actually the reverse. Like, I don't want to accidentally sober up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know.
Oh man. What about you, DJB?
Yeah, well, for me, I think if I did tell people, if I was more honest about my addiction with people in my life, I probably would have kicked the habit sooner, much sooner. I would have probably tried harder, but I guess there was just, maybe it was pride or something that I wanted to try to kick it without anybody knowing that I was addicted to it.
Right.
Maybe I just didn't want to have that stigma attached to me too. Like, oh, I had addiction problem, and I didn't want people in my life, looking at me like, oh, that person, like, well, he was an addict, like he was addicted to, this type of medication. So I guess I wanted to try to get out of it without like, no harm being done in the relationships that I had, or as little harm done as possible. But in retrospect, I probably would have kicked the habit much sooner if I was more discreet about it, if I asked for help, if I was more open.
Yeah. Ben says there was a newspaper here in the UK after Elton John came forward with his drugs and alcohol addiction, and they said that he was addicted to cocaine simply because it was perceived as an upper class drug. Elton came forward and said no. It didn't seem like much when I read about it, but now I understand it. Yeah. Ismail said that it gives me excitement to do it when not getting caught, for sure. And also when someone tells me not to do something, I feel the need to do that specific task or activity. Like telling a child not to eat candy and then leaving them in the room alone with it. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. It can become a cycle of doing it to get rid of the bad feeling you had after you did it the last time. Oh, wow. That is a great point.
That is really true.
Yes.
That is so true, because it's like I don't know if there's like a specific term for it, but it is that kind of like cycle of shame. You like feel ashamed and guilty of like what you did last night, so then you drink to stop feeling like that or to stop remembering that, and then you just get like caught in this cycle where you're constantly trying to forget everything.
God, yeah, that's such a good point. Thank you for bringing that up, guys. So when you were kind of like discovering that you possibly had an addiction problem, did you initially want help, or were you resistant to it? Like, I can figure this out myself. And once you kind of got to the point where you realized, yes, I do need help, I'm open to it, where did you go? What did you do? Jess, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, sure. So as I had said before, I got sober in October 2018, but my first like attempt, I guess, was really in May of 2018. I wasn't like, and this is a very alcoholic thing to do. I've talked to so many other alcoholics who did this exact same thing, where they go, all right, well, I'm going to prove to myself that I'm not an alcoholic by quitting drinking. And I'm going to do it on my own. And I'm going to prove to myself that I can. And if I can quit drinking, well, that means I can drink, because clearly I can do it.
I don't have a problem.
You know, like, so I don't have a problem. Exactly. I can quit anytime I want. That's the old adage. So in May of 2018, I decided, all right, fuck it. Like, I'm going to stop drinking and I'm going to do it on my own. I don't need like a sponsor. I don't need a program. I don't need like anything. So for May, June, March, April, and May. Sorry, I was getting the months that I did confused. Yeah, it started in March. So for March, April, and May, I made it to 3 months. It started literally March 1st.
Wow.
So all of March, April, and May, I didn't drink.
Wow.
And then to reward myself on June 1st, I went out and I bought some vodka and I started drinking again. Because I said, look, I did it. Clearly, I can do it, you know? Because again, the whole time I was still in denial and I didn't think I needed help. So then finally, like October 2018 rolled around and I was like ready to actually quit. So I decided to actually get help, you know, and I did do the whole AA thing. And like, you know, Raven, I know we talked a little bit before the show began about how I don't want to like, you know, because the whole concept is I'm not speaking on behalf of AA and I don't want to like misrepresent it in any way. But, you know, I do go to AA. I think it's a wonderful program. That's what helped me a lot.
Yeah. And is it misrepresented in movies?
Oh God, yes.
Okay.
I've only seen a handful. And that's the one thing that I will say that I do like really speaking about AA about, is just that movies and TV shows do such a horrible job of representing the program and meetings and stuff like that. And that's why it really frustrates me that like it, you know, because I kept saying, oh, well, that's not the place for me. And because also like I've been, you know, pretty much an atheist my entire life. Yeah. So I was like, oh, and they keep talking about all those God stuff. So definitely it's not the place for me. And there's so many reasons why I thought it was not for me. And that's why I really, back in March, had tried to like do it on my own and stuff. And then like you can tell, like I can very easily tell when media has somebody who is an alcoholic in recovery that is either like one of the writers or something. Like I can tell who's been to an AA meeting by the way they're represented. So if you have ever watched, so Stephen King is an alcoholic. And so Dr. Sleep, the movie with Ewan McGregor, the sequel to The Shining, is a very good movie. And from what I recall a while ago, I saw that movie, from what I recall, very accurate representation of AA and of a person who uses AA as their program of recovery. And I thought I really nailed it, because there's so many other, I think that's the only example I can think of. I don't think I've ever seen another TV show or movie.
Isn't that sad?
Well, Shameless toward the end does. I would say Shameless is pretty accurate too, toward the end. But otherwise, like, yeah, it's horrible.
It's so horrible. And I think this people might not agree with me on, and I really don't care, but I don't like it when comedy movies make it a point to joke about AA meetings. Like it's not funny. It's something that has destroyed many lives. It is something that people genuinely struggle with and possibly have even like died from, and they make it as a point of humor. And I know, I get it. Humor or comedy is that one place where anything should be allowed. I totally get it. But for me, I still think that there should be a line around things that are just like real, like really destroying people's lives, and people are genuinely struggling and suffering. You know, I don't think that should be something that anyone should be making fun of. So I do want to say my 2 cents about that.
Oh, and I completely agree with that, but it kind of goes back to kind of the stigma behind a lot of this stuff, and how someone in chat even pointed out, you know, that people who don't understand think it comes down to like, oh, we'll just quit. Right. It's a willpower thing,
right.
You know,
True.
So that's why it becomes a joke, because they as somebody who does not have an addiction and does not understand, they think, oh, okay, well, it's just so easy to just quit. So clearly, like, there's something wrong with that person. So we can make fun of that person. It's okay to make fun of that person.
It's not taken as seriously, so like it's totally open for jokes.
Like with alcohol, it's everywhere. It's so you know, it's legal. It's not looked down upon. It's advertised to us, which that is a uniquely United States thing, I believe. I mean, maybe Canada as well, but like I've heard some friends in other countries will tell me it's very bizarre to see American advertisements for alcohol and for certain brands of alcohol. It's either, I don't know if they just don't do that in Europe or if it's not nearly as
Interesting. I didn't know that.
But yeah.
We have it. We have like
We do in Canada,
Absolutes
too.
and Baileys I've seen.
Okay, so
Absolute,
maybe it was like a
Smirnoff.
North American thing, and it just doesn't happen as much in Europe. But
You know what I'm interested in knowing also, Jess? If they don't advertise it as much, are there less stores that you can buy it at? Because here, everywhere.
yeah, well, that's something. First of all, in the United States, it is regulated at a state level. So certain states, because of because we had like prohibition and stuff like that. So certain states will have like in Ohio, you can buy beer and wine and liquor up to a certain proof, which is up to like 40 proof, I think, which is 20%, at a grocery store. Everything else you have to go to a state licensed liquor store for. Other states, it's completely different. You can buy like I think California, you can buy like any kind of liquor, any proof liquor at a grocery store. And then in like Massachusetts, you have to go to specifically something called a packy, which is a packaged liquor store, and I think you can't even buy like beer and wine. In Minnesota, I think you can't even buy beer and wine at a grocery store. I might be wrong about that. Versus in like, so yeah, it's very crazy. And then in like in certain Nordic countries as well, like in Sweden, same thing. Like you have to specifically go to a Systembolaget, which is like a government-run grocery store or government-run liquor store to get your liquor. It's like it's regulated so differently in
Each
state by
state.
state, and then in
Wow.
other countries in Europe too.
Wow. I know here in Toronto, there are so many liquor stores that it actually kind of gets me thinking sometimes that it must be so much more difficult to have these many places to get it. In like almost every plaza that you go to, there's a grocery store and then there's a liquor store for people who are trying to quit, for people who are trying to, they're on their early stages of their journey and they're trying to quit. Kind of gets me thinking about that sometimes. How about you, DJB? Did you said that you wish that, if you had been more transparent and open with your loved ones, you think that you could have gotten on the road to recovery sooner. So did you want help in the beginning, or did you think that you could figure out by yourself?
I definitely realized at a point that I knew that if I just kept going and going, it was just going to get worse and worse. I had talked to my doctor, when I realized it was getting bad. I said, what are some of my alternatives?
Mm-hmm.
And I guess maybe it was on me. I should have been a bit more like, what can I do to like kick this habit? But instead, I think he took that as in, what are some other drugs I can take? So at that point, I'd already tried Percocet. Like I said, Vicodin, Norco, Percocet. So then he's like, your other options are morphine or methadone. And at that point, I was like, no,
You're not getting it. Right.
Yeah, that just sounds so much worse. I had a housemate when I was in college, and he was a former addict, and he told me like, he'd taken the gamut of like heroin, cocaine, crack cocaine and stuff like that. And he said that his worst high that he'd ever gotten was from methadone, like his worst trip. So I was like, no, I'm not taking any of that.
Yeah.
I definitely realized that this is a bad slope to be on. So I'm gonna, I wanted to just get off of it. And like his suggestion was then quit cold turkey. And I'm like,
But
I
your
don't know if he
pain.
realizes-
But your pain.
Well, I think at this point, yeah, definitely that's true. But at this point, I was already treating my condition to the point where the pain was manageable, without using like opiates.
Okay.
Or,
Also, for clarification, are opioids painkillers, basically? Or am I not understanding that correctly? What are opioids?
At least what, from my understanding, They are, yeah, they're pain killers that, I don't want to say that they all come from opium. I know that Percocet is used derived from opium, but I'd have to know a bit more on that. Um, like the pharmaceutical type understanding of it. But so at that point, I was telling my doctor, okay, well then why don't I just, because Percocet was heavily controlled, I had to basically see my doctor every month to get a refill on Percocet. So I said, okay, well then just move me back down to Norco, and then I'm just gonna try to taper it off myself. And so, and that's what I did. I bought myself a pill cutter, and at this point I was up to like 2, almost 3 pills, at every dose. And what I did was I cut the pills into quarters.
Okay.
And I said, okay, so every week I'm going to take 1/4 of a pill away from each dose. So obviously it took a long time.
Wow.
You tapered.
And so, yeah, right. So, so if I was at 3 pills, then I did 2 3/4 pills. Next
okay,
week,
okay,
I did
okay.
2 1/2
okay.
pills. Then the week after that, 2 1/4 pill. And I failed so many times, to be honest, because it just, I told a friend of mine who had also been who had also dealt with opioid addiction, and he said like, yeah, I don't know how you could do that when you have like a full bottle of pills left over, when you say you're down to 1 pill and you have like a full bottle of Norco, I would just, take some more. So, and that's what I would do, to be honest. I failed so many times. Like I would be down to maybe like 1 pill, and then I would be like, do I really want to cut down to 3/4, or I know I'm gonna, because I've been tapering myself off, and my what do you call it, my
Dependency.
my yeah, like I know I know I'm going to feel the buzz.
Oh,
if
okay.
I take 2 pills.
Okay, gotcha,
know?
gotcha. Like your tolerance
So-
has decreased, so you'll feel it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I would do that, and then I would be back to square one. And
Yeah.
but yeah, so it, like I said, it took me a year to fully like get myself off of it, but I did it myself, and I definitely recommend people getting help if they want to like get off of opiates, because I know that for a lot of people that might be difficult to taper off like that. Like I
Yeah.
said, my friend, he said if he tried that, he said he wouldn't be able to do it.
He had to do cold turkey.
Sorry, if he were to do it,
Oh, he didn't.
Probably.
Sorry. He was just suggesting that you do it cold turkey.
yeah,
okay.
either that or just I don't know if he ever actually cut the habit.
Wow.
He and I don't really we didn't keep in touch that much longer after that, but yeah, so for me, I've considered myself thankful that I was able to taper off and wean myself off slowly, and I finally got myself, after so many weeks, down to just a half pill. And at that point I was like, okay, I can just cut it, and the withdrawals were there, but they weren't so bad because I was doing it so slowly, and yeah, like I said, I consider myself very fortunate to be able to have weed myself off in that way without having to go through rehab or anything.
Damn. Do you guys think that going through the recovery is easier when you have a partner by your side, or easier to kind of do it all alone and just work with a therapist or with a sponsor or with help? Do you think that makes a difference at all? Because personally speaking, I always just think like, oh, it would be, I haven't put much thought to it in terms of addiction, but whenever I'm faced with something super difficult, like a very trying chapter in my life, I'm like, oh, that I feel like this would be so much easier to do or get through with support or with my, plus one. Do you guys think that way about recovery, or do you think it's sort of better to do it alone? Because I also do think media kind of has this romanticization of, you know, being with someone who is struggling with addiction and being that person who fixes them or helps them through that. But they don't focus on how difficult it can be, I think, to be that other person and to see the person that you love who is in pain and is struggling. And I think the strength that it takes possibly to help someone get the help and then recover. Would you say that it takes strength, a lot of strength from the counterpart to get their partner through?
Definitely.
I think that's a really good question. And I think that one reason many recovery programs will recommend that you not date within your first year of recovery is, or maybe you don't know this.
I didn't know that.
Many programs will recommend that you don't date, that you don't try to form any romantic attachments during your first year of recovery. And part of that is because it can be first of all, your first year can be very tumultuous, and it's really easy to get into a relationship, you get out of it, you're upset, you relapse, first of all. Or second of all, that you can replace one addiction with another. Your new romantic partner can become your new addiction, when you make everything about them. Or like you said, can be really hard for the person. So I think it really all depends on the partner. My boyfriend is very laid back, very supportive. Anything he doesn't understand, I explain to him, and he doesn't really make assumptions or whatever. He asks questions and I answer them, so he has a pretty good understanding of I think addiction and alcoholism and sobriety and recovery and stuff like that. So, he never does anything that makes, it's been a lot easier with him. Yeah. And cause I started dating him and then got sober, it was so much easier than trying to date as a sober person. Cause even though by the time we he became my boyfriend, we had already been dating, so I didn't have to try to our first few dates were at bars, and I got wasted. And then all of a sudden I got sober, and, it's great that he was able to take that change, and we kind of, I think, grew together as I, proceeded along my sobriety journey. But I think it would have been really difficult for me to do it the other way around, for me to get sober by myself and then try to date and find a partner. I think that would have been really difficult for me, but I think everyone's different.
Right. Yeah. Subby, what about you?
Well, personally, I didn't really have experience with trying to get through it with someone. So for me, after I had gotten out of the military, pretty much no one else around me was engaged in the tobacco nicotine habit. So for me, it was just putting a lot of pressure on myself of, hey, recognizing this is my personal issue and I need to get through it. But I definitely think it would have been of benefit to me to have an outside force. And I think another reason why it took me such a long time to break my addiction was just because, anytime I would attempt, it was basically only myself that I was able to rely on to hold myself accountable. And when it comes to something like this, when it's, a powerful behavioral thing, it's not going to happen overnight.
Right.
In the majority of cases. So, and another thing for me too is part of the reason why I continued so long, even after I realized that I had a problem, was I was waiting for someone to just be persistent and in my ear all the time about, hey, this is bad, you need to stop. I heard it from family and I heard it from friends, but no one other than words, they didn't really follow up too much. So it got to the point where, I go to the dentist twice a year, and it got to the point where I was almost begging them in my head, please tell me you see signs of gum cancer, or please tell me you notice something physical, so so I have that realization that, hey, something's finally, we're getting to the tipping point that this is kind of your make it or break it. Unfortunately, that never happened. And like I said, I would tell my dentist how, I was chew every day, all day, please tell me you see something here, so so I can wake up and change. And it never got to that point, I guess, fortunately for my health.
Yeah,
But it did take me the better part of 2 years to finally to finally say, hey, like this needs to stop. And I ended up quitting cold turkey, which I know for a lot of nicotine users or tobacco users is a hard thing to do.
Right.
You know, you've heard stories of people throwing away their family members' cigarettes and stuff and such. So it took me 2 attempts to do that, but it finally got to the point where I realized, like, hey, if I'm not going to do it, no one else is going to be able to do it for me. No one else is going to see how this is affecting my relationships with my family and friends. So I would say it definitely would be a benefit to have someone, because it took me, again, 2 years trying to do it by myself.
Yeah. What you said reminds me of a scene from This Is Us. I don't know if you guys know of that show, but basically the show is the show follows three people, 2 twins and 1 person that was born on the same day. So they're adopted as a the third one is adopted as a family of into a family that has twins that were born on the same day, and it just follows their lives, how they all grow up and what the 3 generations have gone through. So the parents who adopted the kids growing up, and then those kids having kids. And the one of the main characters, who's the dad, he is portrayed as this wonderful father, absolute, like the ideal dad. And his major issue is that he's an alcoholic. And there's this super powerful scene. I'm actually gonna post the link. I think I have the link somewhere, actually. I'm gonna post the link because I would really recommend that you guys check it out if you are interested in the show or watching the show. Because, okay, well, never mind, I can't find it right now. But if you just go onto YouTube and you just search up like Jack drinking scene or something at the door, there's this really powerful scene where his wife, I think it's Rebecca and Jack drinking scene, or like alcoholic scene or something like that. She basically kicks him out he makes a choice to leave them because he says, listen, I can't continue being a good dad and a good husband because I have a problem and I don't know how to fix it. So I'm just going to kind of like take some time apart from you to try to figure this out on my own. But the strength with which she comes back at him with, I think that I've never been in a situation where I've needed help to recover from some kind of situation, but that scene was so moving to me because I thought that if, God forbid, I was in a situation where it was really dark and I needed help, like that's the kind of conviction with which you want your partner to come to you and say, like, we're a team, like we solve shit together. So get in the car, I'm taking you home, and we will figure this out together. Like we will fix this together. And it's like she was basically that strength to say, you are not alone. It's a you and me problem, and we both are going to fix this. I will drive you to and from your sessions. Like we'll make it work together. And it was such a beautiful, beautiful scene. I think it's called, if you just YouTube Rebecca and Jack, alcohol. Let me see. Get in the car. It's called Get in the Car. The scene is Get in the Car. Found it. Thank you. So yeah.
Presented by Chevrolet.
Is that the ad that you got?
It's the every video I'm finding. This is us. Get in the car. Episode highlight presented by Chevrolet.
That's Chevrolet. Yeah. When I think of getting help and having that like ideal partner, that's the scene that comes to my mind because it was such a beautiful scene and you could see how much it meant to him. Again, I get it. It's a TV show, but look, a lot of the TV show is quite real. Like it makes me slightly emotional every time I watch an episode. DJB, have you answered this question? I feel like you did, but I just wanted to confirm.
No.
Oh, you didn't? Okay.
That's okay.
I
guess I just want to, to add on to what Jess and Sammy were saying. I think there's pros and cons, definitely. for having somebody in your life to help you through your addiction. Definitely pros for that the individual going through the addiction,
Yeah.
but I feel like some of the cons are that can also bleed into your relationship with that person,
Yes.
and it can also affect that person emotionally as well, in ways that you may not want. And I think that's something I realized early on when I was going through my addiction, and I had started dating uh, uh, my current wife, or my wife now, sorry, my girlfriend then. I didn't want that to be a part of our relationship, and I didn't want that to affect our relationship.
Right.
And so I think a lot of that was my uh driving force for really pushing to kick the habit. But I wasn't disclosing that 100% my issue with opiates at the time.
Right.
I was doing it on my own, but I guess just having that, having her in my life and giving me support, and knowing that I was going through health issues and coming off of some health issues, and still dealing with certain medication type related issues. I think that was definitely a good support to have, and that definitely helped me in kicking the habit.
Yeah, and I like that you mentioned the effects of it possibly bleeding into your relationship, because whenever I have my real talks, and if the opportunity presents itself, I like to talk about capacity, which is something that we don't talk about enough. And a lot of us have either been raised to be, or have been told to be, or have observed that this is how we should be. We should be fixers. And we get sometimes so caught up in being the person trying to fix other people that sometimes we don't pay attention to our own capacity. Fixing someone or helping someone through these difficult times, it is very difficult, and you need, I think, a certain level of strength to be able to help people through whatever demons they're facing, not just addictions, all kinds of other things. Even if it's like mental health issues or mental illnesses, those themselves take a lot of capacity for a partner to help the person that's being affected by it. So I think that that's something that is really good that you mentioned, that if there's anyone in chat who's dealing with someone who is struggling with these addictions, don't feel bad if you realize that you do not have the capacity to help them through those difficult times. Right. There's a fine line between supporting someone and fixing someone. And I think when you're trying to fix someone, it can become very overwhelming, because you're doing most of the heavy lifting. And when you're supporting someone, they're doing the heavy lifting because they want to, move on to the next chapter of your life. You're just kind of there catching them when they fall and kind of helping them stabilize themselves, instead of like completely picking someone up and dragging them. So much strength. Yeah. So I do want to mention capacity is a thing in this situation as well. So I know you guys kind of talked about this, but relapsing. So when you were trying to recover and move on to the next chapter of your life. So DJB, you said that you did relapse a few times. Jess and Subby, you all said that you kind of relapsed a little bit. Well, no, you quit cold turkey, Subby, but you said it took you 2 years, right?
It took me 2 attempts.
2 attempts.
I tried to stop cold turkey twice.
Okay.
The first time, I made it about a week, and then I realized that my body just craved it so bad that I needed to give it that satisfaction, and then that went on for another about 8 months. But then again, I tried a lot of different things, or a lot of different methods in order to what I thought was weaning myself off, but it seemed like I would try to go. I would give myself one in the morning, and then I would try to go the rest of the day without it. But then I realized that next morning I wanted more than I had the day before, and so that didn't really. And then it hit me kind of at the end of 2019. Like again, I'd been doing this for 5 years. At that point, I'd really shifted my focus into the broadcast industry, and I was like, well, if I'm gonna continue for work, it's not realistic for me to make this a part of my life moving forward. So I decided then and there that one of my New Year's resolutions. I know people have varying opinions on New Year's resolutions. Technically, any time is a good time to change something about you, but I felt, at least for me, it was a milestone that I could say, hey, starting January 1st, 2020, I'm done. And I stopped. I haven't. I've craved it several times, and I've gone back. I would say the one thing about my situation though is tobacco isn't the actual addictive part of chewing tobacco. It is the nicotine. And so I'm kind of still in the process of
Right.
of working through that. I'm currently still a nicotine user. Actually, I have nicotine pouches with me now, and those are kind of my
Nicotine
substitute
pouches.
for chewing tobacco. So it's still a process for me. It's still a growing process, a learning process. Fortunately, cutting out the tobacco cut out my risk of gum cancer, any oral cancer.
Okay, that's good.
But nicotine still has health effects, and that's something that I'm now a year and a month out of. Still something that I'm slowly working. I used to have a nicotine pouch all the time, all day, I still use them, but it's become a process of trying to manage those in a much more realistic way. And I realize, obviously, after a month, that it's still not something I can cut out of my life just like that. But it's been a slow process over these past 390 days or whatever it is that at least I've given myself the opportunity to take those steps to make that change. Because I do realize I'm 25 right now, so I still have a lot of life left in me, hopefully.
Yes.
So it was that realization of, hey, you're still young. It's never too late to change, especially
Absolutely.
being a young guy. Like I just realized that if I want to put my career first and my future first, like this has to happen.
Yeah. Also, that was a really good snap. Let me just say, that was a really good snap. TJB, I know you said that you did relapse a couple of times.
Yeah, but I'm thankful that ever since I was able to get off of it, I've always stayed away from the pills. I guess I know that I'd never want to live my life like that again, where living from pill to pill, from dose to dose, and just being basically controlled by that schedule. And I know that it's a danger that I always have to be mindful of. So when I'm talking to my doctor now, if they ever prescribe me anything new, I always ask them why, and I do my research and I look up like
wow.
what are the effects of these medications that they want to give me now. I'm very cautious about that stuff because of that ordeal that I went through. But thankfully, no, I never relapsed since, and it's been 8 years now
Wow.
since the last time I've taken a opiate pill. Yeah.
I'm proud of you. That's awesome. That's really awesome. Also, can we maybe get a definition of relapse? Is relapse when you attempt to quit and you're unsuccessful, or is relapse only when you've actually quit and then you go back to your habits? Or are both of those examples of relapses? I don't know, actually. Do you guys know?
I think that's a really good question, and I think there's no the technical strict definition of a relapse is when you've quit doing something and then you go back to it, you fall off of your sobriety. But I kind of liked your first definition also of how did you put it?
Like you're attempting
Like
to
when you're
quit
trying
it,
to
but
quit, you
you're
don't-
unsuccessful. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would consider that relapse as well. So, which is really funny because this was very clarifying for me because when, I had mentioned back in like March of 2018, I never saw it as I'm quitting alcohol for good. I was like, oh, I'm quitting it temporarily to see if I can. So when I started drinking again, I didn't see it as a relapse because I didn't see myself as like a sober person who would quit. I saw it as a temporary thing. But when I look back, what I refer to it, the language I use when I refer to it is like the first time I tried to stop drinking. So if you want to frame it that way, I always think of myself as, oh, I never relapsed. But if you want to frame it that way, like, yeah, technically I did because I tried to stop and and I was really unsuccessful. I relapsed 3 months later. But again, I didn't see it as relapse because I saw it as my choice. And I, up until that point, always saw relapse as like, oh, we can't help it. It's something that happens.
Right.
But like, I mean, if I like take responsibility for it and stuff, realistically, like, yeah, that's technically what happened, And since I officially, like, I consider the start of my sobriety journey really to have begun in October of 2018. And so I haven't relapsed since then. But like, yeah, in the technical sense, yeah, I would say I did relapse then.
That is so interesting.
That's a great question, though, and that's like, thank you for
thank you
helping me kind of reframe my mindset that way.
That is interesting, yeah, because I was like, wait a minute, am I asking an incorrectly phrased question, or am I just not understanding relapse?
No, and I think that's a great question because another thing is you do see those people that like, and I've had these people also that I've tried to help that they try to quit and they have, and then you get to a point where it goes, okay, well, yeah, how do you call this a relapse or not when every single day you go, okay, I'm quitting, and then by that evening you're drinking.
Right,
it's
right.
Like, well, are you really sober for that day and then you relapse each night? Is that what you want to call it? Do you want to call it a series of relapses? In my mind, I look at it as one relapse where then you have all these attempts you're trying, but you're not sober. You haven't quit.
Right.
If you're trying and you keep relapsing, you're doing something wrong. Like you need to reframe your perspective. And
if you're trying to maybe quit in the same way with all conditions still the same.
Well, yeah, going back to the insanity thing.
Right.
Like if you keep relapsing, if you're having one of those, oh, it's been a week and every single day I say I'm sober and I quit drinking or whatever, and then I'm relapsing or whatever, then yeah, at what point do you say, well, I'm not really a sober person. This clearly isn't working. I need to change my methods.
Something needs to be changed. Yeah, exactly. Thank you, guys. That was really, really eye-opening. Thank you. And our last question of the night is what I like to end off with is usually some kind of takeaway for anyone who's watching, some kind of educational bit. So we've talked about relapsing. We've talked about the struggle of, coping with addiction and recovering. So when you were going through your addiction, what did you need from people around you? So I know we've talked about like the actual help that you can receive, professional help, psychologists and therapists and the sponsor program. But what did you need from people around you? I know empathy is definitely one of those things. Empathy can save lives. Okay, I'm not even exaggerating right now. But what else would have helped maybe you become more comfortable with talking about your addiction, to like be able to come forward about it, to help you deal with it, to like speed up the process? Is there something that the people around you could have done to help you or, aid in your recovery? DJB?
Well, I think the most important thing, in my opinion, is if someone wants to support somebody going through addiction, is to believe in them. Of course, I think things like tough love, accountability, those types of things are important. But sometimes like just letting them know that you believe, if their goal is to truly like kick the habit, then believe that they can do that. Because sometimes they won't even believe that themselves.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Believe that they can do it. And if you show that you don't believe in them, if they tell you like, oh man, like I'm trying to get off of these pills, but I used them again yesterday, and then you shake your head and like figures or something like that.
Yes.
That's not
what they need at that moment.
Yeah, I think it's definitely important. Like, you believe in them, believe that they can do it. Getting out of get if they want to get out of their addiction, if that's what they truly want, that's, to me, that would have been the most important thing for me.
Yeah.
Is if someone went to me and was like, I know you can pull yourself up out of it.
Yeah. And on top of it, from the other party's perspective, if you see the person, acting on that, like, yes, they want to get out of this addiction and they're actually trying, they're really trying. And yes, they've relapsed or they've been unsuccessful a couple of times or every other night, but like, they're really trying and they're trying different things and they just haven't possibly found something that sticks yet, or it's a super stressful time in their life, whatever the case is. But yeah, I think believing in them could really make a huge difference. Jess, what about you?
I think that's a really good point. And I think on top of that, when people are listening and not necessarily trying to understand, but just listening without making assumptions, because, as we've talked about, there's so much stigma, there's so many assumptions that people make. And I think, like, it's okay to ask questions, but I think the more helpful thing is to listen. And then also, just like on this note, I also want to give a shout out to, there is a sister program to AA that is called Al-Anon. And Al-Anon is a program that is for people who have a loved one who is an alcoholic, regardless of if that alcoholic is still drinking. So for instance, if your spouse or your children or your parents have a drinking problem, and you yourself, regardless of if you do or not, you can go to Al-Anon, which is a support group that is for, it's, among other things, teaches things like you cannot fix anyone, you cannot heal this alcoholic, like they have to, because the other kind of part of that question is like, yeah, it's great to want to help alcoholics and to help, or anyone, it's great to want to help people, but the only person who can get someone sober is themselves. So you can like want to help somebody, but there's only so much you can do,
right.
And that person has to make that decision for themselves and kind of independently of you. So Al-Anon is a program that kind of helps you deal with, what do you do with yourself and your feelings when the alcoholic in your life is still drinking and is struggling with sobriety and, is struggling with all these things. How can you be the most supportive person to them? And how can you live your life without it affecting you?
Wow. How do you spell that?
It's just Al-Anon. So it's like, so people get it confused because, AA stands for Alcoholics Anonymous. And then the program that I was talking about is called Al-Anon. So it sounds like it's an abbreviation for Alcoholics Anonymous, but it's actually a separate sister program that also has 12 steps. And it's, like I said, geared toward folks who have an alcoholic loved one.
Cool. Thank you. I'm learning so much. I didn't know that even existed. That's awesome.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't, and that's why I like to shout it out, because everybody's heard of AA,
right?
And then a lot of people, I'm very vocal about, I want to try to help people not only who are struggling with addiction and alcoholism themselves, but people who have a loved one, because like a lot of my Twitter followers are a lot of them are like 18 to 22, so they might still be living with their parents, and then a lot of them have messaged me saying like, hey, my dad has a drinking problem, what can I do? And I say, go to Al-Anon,
right?
And a lot of them get confused at first because they're like, no, I don't have the drinking problem, and I go, no, I didn't say AA.
right. There's a difference. This is so interesting. I had no idea. I really love that you mentioned that it's nice that you want to support them. But the only person who can change and really help themselves out is the person suffering from the addiction. And I think that can be said for so many things, not just addictions, but also any kind of like super negative trait even that someone can have, like anger issues, or people who are domestic abusers, which is actually a topic coming up for next week's Ravens Real Talk. That's not something you can fix or help. Like, that person's got to want to be better. That person's got to want to seek therapy or, address whatever demons that they're facing. And I know that's not a direct link to addiction, but I love when people mention that it's up to the person who is suffering from whatever they're suffering to help themselves and heal themselves. I feel like too often there's, again, this romanticization of brokenness and healing someone and helping someone, but really you will drown with this person, yeah, they got to admit their mistakes. They got to be accountable for themselves. They've got to own up to whatever they're dealing with. And then you can be that support, like we were saying, that support, but you can't be the main person pulling all the weight.
Yeah,
so
you
thank
can't be,
you.
like, the reason someone gets sober. And then the other thing is there's a
Yes.
lot of, it's a very common alcoholic thing to blame your drinking on other people.
Oh.
So like that's, you know, that's another thing Al-Anon is very helpful for, because it helps you realize that like the person, like, you know, people, some people are mean drunks, you know, so some people might, you know, literally blame their spouse, like, well, I you know, if you didn't blank, I wouldn't drink so much,
Right.
kind of thing, you know. And
Shoot.
Al-Anon kind of helps you see that like it is not your fault, you know, addiction is horrible.
Thank you.
And I guess I want to touch on something too. A line that came up from earlier in the show from the chat. The line of, or there is a line between supporting someone and fixing someone. I think that is so important, because as Jess and DJB have touched on too, like it's one thing to recognize someone else's issue, but then, you know, what steps do you take in order to get them to that goal? Because like Jess was saying, and like both of them have said, like the only person that can really change that addiction is that person. So for me too, my situation was a little different because I kept mine so under wraps.
Right.
And to this day, again, like I've started to open up about it, but I would say, you know, the number of people in chat right now is more than the people in my life that know that I ever, you know, had an addiction to chewing tobacco in the first place. And so for me, it was that towing that line of trying to take care of something without as many people knowing. But I would say, if when it comes to addiction, the first step is obviously to open up about what the issue is. But then as someone outside in, trying to be that supporter of the cause, to find ways to do it that aren't overbearing, that aren't going to put in the
Overbearing. Yes.
Because I think that can happen. That can happen a lot. And, you know, I was hearing from my family and friends like, "Hey, that's a dirty habit. Like, you gotta get." But it's one thing to say that too, but then it's, you know, are you gonna support the way that I go about doing that? Because, you know, everyone's gonna be different. It's gonna be a different timeline for everyone. Some people might be able to get the help and support they need, and it may only take a couple weeks. It may take a couple years, you know, anywhere in between. So that's important too, that everyone is going to be different, and there's not necessarily one cookie cutter way in order to address that issue. And I think that's another huge thing is the timeline too, for how long it takes each individual person to overcome those challenges that they're facing.
Yeah, and acknowledge that as a supporter, that, you know, this person, you might see this person fall a bunch of times before they're finally up and running. And, you know, I think one of the things that I would think that would also be helpful, I love that you mentioned the overbearing, because I can see that becoming a thing, like the constant then over checking on the person, and maybe like constantly seeing like, are they back at it again, or like constant asking questions like, oh, how's that going? I don't know about you guys, but like if I was recovering from something, I wouldn't want constant questions, because what if I did have a bad night? What if I did relapse? Like, I don't want to talk about it. I'm already ashamed. I'm already beating myself up over it, right? I don't want to hear more about it. So I think like being sensitive with talking about it, does that make sense? Like addressing it. I think,
and that's really funny, because you exactly hit the nail on the head of like something that happened to me of like when, you know, in March 2018, when I, you know, like quit drinking the first time.
Right.
And I like did not want to talk to my fiance about it at all. I just didn't want him knowing. I did, like, he knew, like I told him, like he knew that I had like quit drinking or whatever, but like I just didn't want to talk about it. And I remember one time I had ordered a book, and it was like a book about like recovery and alcoholism and stuff like that. And it had arrived in the mail, and he opened it. He says by accident. I have a lot of resentment toward him still, obviously. But he like opened it. He says it was an accident, you know, and he sees this book that's like about recovery and stuff. And he like asks me about it. And I'm like, I freak out. And I'm like, I told you I didn't want to talk about it.
Oh my God.
And I'm like flying into a rage. And, you know,
let's say it was an accident. Why bring it up, bro? I would cover that up, pack that up, packing tape it, and be like, a package came for you. I don't know what it's in it, and don't ask them.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't understand people sometimes. I feel like, and I think maybe part of it is their lack of awareness, because maybe it hasn't touched them, their lives. So maybe they don't quite know how to handle it and go about it. But I really, really think that if people just led their lives with more empathy, if we all led our lives with more empathy, or at least attempting to empathize, then even if we haven't experienced something that someone is going through, we would at least learn to kind of like cater our behavior to them. Or, you know what? How about this? I'm a huge advocate for asking questions. Jess, what do you need from me? You're having a little bit of a breakdown. What do you need from me? Just ask. You don't always have to have the answers. You don't always have to be perfect. And I think that makes such a good partner or friend when you're like, I really don't know how to handle you right now. What do you need from me? I will do whatever you need me to. And of course, the onus is on the other party to not be pissed off that the person doesn't know how to handle you. Unless it's a recurring thing, then you can be mad at them because they should know you by now. But I do think for dealing with, again, I'm speaking as if I possibly had an addiction. Not that I have one, because I don't want to speak out of place. Like, I don't want to speak on behalf of people who have suffered from addictions, but I think that if I was to go through something like that, I would definitely want empathy, and I wouldn't want hovering, like I wouldn't want the overbearing. And I know if I was living at home, that would be the case. So I'm just kind of like thinking of the worst case scenarios of, you know, how your parents would constantly be asking questions and giving you the pity look and like there's something wrong with you and all of that. Just be kind and empathetic. And again, like Jess said, realize that there's only so much help that you can give someone. Maybe don't say you're having a little bit of a breakdown. Yeah, that's true too. That's true too. Unless the person said, in my head, it was more like the person saying I'm having a breakdown, and you're just kind of saying it back to them that, okay, you're having a breakdown. I don't know how to deal with you in this situation. What do I do? Yeah, pity is not the response to give. So yeah. Anything else, guys, that you want to touch on before we head off for the night, or any closing remarks that you want to say to everyone?
My main closing remark, I would say, is that I have found that recovery and sobriety are different for everybody. And I know earlier tonight I was like, I'm not going to talk about AA because of the anonymity, and then here I go always talking about it. But the thing that I really love about AA is that the 12 steps are not hard and fast rules. They are guidelines, suggestions, and recommendations, and that the only rule for AA is that you must have a desire to stop drinking. You don't even have to have quit. I have given rides to people to meetings that are wasted. Nobody said anything. Nobody kicked them out. We want them here. Clearly, you have a problem. You're in the right place. You did that thing. You did the thing. That's the hardest part, you know? Doesn't matter if you I know people who showed up to meetings drunk for their first 2 months, and then they finally got it. So the point is that, and there's even a lot of discussion about, is relapse a part of recovery? Does that mean there's just so much. Everybody's recovery journey, everybody's sobriety journey is different.
Yes.
And yeah, as long as you want to stop drinking, you're doing the right thing, just one day at a time.
Yeah, I think people forget or don't realize how difficult it is for people to ask for help, and for putting themselves in a situation where they are receiving help. Like, I think there's so much strength that goes behind getting to that point where you're like, okay, take me to a meeting, or listen, I need help. To admit I have a problem. Like, that takes a lot of strength for all of those. As you guys have heard from these guests, like, they all had situations where they were like, I think I can handle it by myself. Like, I'm good. I can do this by myself. I'm okay. So let's just be more empathetic and realize that it is a really difficult thing to go through, and it's something that should be recognized as such. It's not something that, why don't you just give it up? It's difficult. DJB, any closing remarks?
There's a quote, I'm gonna have to paraphrase it, where it's like, life is only long enough for you to get good at a few things. So be careful what you get good at.
Ooh.
And yeah,
that.
I mean, it's in that way, if you get good at like just you know, things that are not good for you, things that don't things that,
Benefit you. Yeah.
just things that that don't affect your life positively, and you develop that habit, and you take so much of your life
Yeah.
devoted to that habit, whether you want to or not. Sometimes you just have to give up that control without realizing it, of course. And so I think addiction is the same way, where you if you can kick it, you, I I would just want to encourage everyone to do that and find something else that's more fulfilling in life.
Yeah,
to
that is
spend
very,
that
very
time
true.
doing.
Very,
So-
very true. Thank you. Selby?
I would just say it all boils down to having conversations, whether it's coming from someone who has an addiction, and that conversation of whether it's internally or to other people that, hey, there's an issue, or whether it's coming from the outside in, having a conversation with someone that you might see some red flags for. It's all about those conversations, and while they may be difficult, that's all part of the support process to be able to get to that level, and it might not all happen at once. We've talked a lot too tonight about some of the timelines that, and everyone's going to be different.
Yeah.
It's going to be those conversations that are the start of the process, the meat and potatoes of the process, and then all the way through the resolve and beyond, to ensure that once someone successfully or not addresses a challenge, that those conversations stay there to either make sure that someone's successfully continuing on, or if they've have those slip ups, that those conversations can be open and supportive, and continue to keep pointing people in the direction that they need.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you. And I do want to mention that I saw Jeremy said that his dad, I think, or stepdad, was a violent drunk. And I just want to say that I'm really sorry that that's something that you experienced, and that's something that you witnessed, and that's something that you saw. And that leads me to one of my closing remarks, that when we were talking about capacity, and Jess was talking about how it's really in the person's court that is dealing with the addiction to make the changes necessary. Please don't feel guilty if you cannot, I guess, stay for the duration of the recovery process, because we've established that it could take, the timelines are completely unpredictable. It could be a few months, it could be years, and if you are and if it's a person who's really, really struggling, they're really struggling, and they're having many relapses, or they get violent when they do end up having that relapse, it's not your job to stick around and fix them. When your job goes from being the supportive person to trying to fix them, like we've established today and in chat, it can be kind of dangerous for you. So I would definitely encourage people who are in that situation to not feel guilty, because I know in situations, we've talked about mental health in previous Real Talks, and we've talked about mental illnesses and the guilt that people face when they leave someone who's struggling with the mental illness. And when I think of that, I think of addictions as well. And there's definitely guilt when you leave someone who's struggling, and you're like, who is going to take care of them? Will they be okay? What if I make it worse by leaving, so I should just stay? But your life is your own, and you deserve to also be in a situation that is that meets your capacity. And if something does not meet your capacity, it's completely natural and okay to leave and not stay in that situation. I do want to ask one last thing. What was the hardest thing for your recovery, guys? Was there something that you really, really found difficult? Was it the change in behavior from friends? Was it getting used to the new lifestyle?
For me, it was all the firsts. Like the first time I went to a wedding after I stopped drinking. The first time I went to a work event after I stopped drinking. The first time, just every little thing, and typically like the things that I in the past would have been drinking for, the first time doing them sober is always so hard. And then after that, it's like, oh, okay, now I figured that out. I'll just copy that next time.
That's awesome. Subby?
For me, it's all been about the impulse, that control factor, because like the science pointed at early on in my life, that's just a part of my mental makeup. That's unfortunately part of the wiring that makes me is that I will always probably have those tendencies, no matter what the activity or behavior is. So for me, it's just a continual battle with control, and like I said, I'm doing things even now that I still kind of use to help me fight that. But for me, it's just that ongoing battle, probably lifelong battle with control.
Yeah. DJB?
For me, it would have been it still is. It's the transition from getting out of that mentality of living day to day, dose to dose, to planning more for long term and thinking about how I can find how I can focus on more fulfilling long-term goals. Because for me, every day was consumed by, when can I take my next pill? Am I going to be able to still have my pills with me if I go out and I go do this and I try something that's outside of my comfort zone? Like that, will that make my withdrawals worse or whatever? So it was a very day-to-day thing. I didn't really think about like my long-term health, my long-term personal goals, career goals, things like that. And so it definitely took a long time for me to transition into getting back on track and planning for my long-term future and things that I really wanted to do. But that always got put on hold because of what I was going through.
Thank you. That's awesome. Thank you. And as a closer, for anyone who is dealing with addictions, and if you are dealing with, people in your life who are giving you, those negative looks or those really, really hurtful remarks, just know that there's nothing actually wrong with your character just because you're struggling with addictions. This is a chapter in your life that is really difficult, but you will get through it whenever you are ready to take the steps to receive the help that you need, or take the steps by yourself that you need to recover from whatever you're struggling with. You will be okay. Whatever the time is, you will be okay. And please don't listen to all those people who are making you feel bad for having this addiction. It's something that's just part of some people's lives, and it's okay. So that's it for tonight. I'm gonna say goodbye to my guests offline, and then I'll be back to do the Ravens Real Talk wrap. So if I see you guys afterwards, awesome. If I don't, awesome as well. I hope you all have a damn scrumptious night. Do you want to say bye to everybody? Bye.
See you guys.
Everybody. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much. Alrighty. Hello, my scrumptious ravens. Hi, guys. Hi, Farnish. ASMR mouse clicks. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened. I'm experimenting with this new background and new layout and everything, so that's why everything was a little techie today. I'm sorry. DJB, it was an absolute pleasure. Thank you all so much. Right? Thank you for your openness and honesty. It was an absolute pleasure spending time with you. I really appreciate it, guys. We had such an amazing discussion. A huge thank you to DJ B and Jess and Subby. An absolutely amazing end to my Monday. So thank you all for being here. I appreciate it. Hi, Gigan. It was lit. How do you say your name, by the way? Keenine? Can I call you Keenine? Good night, Rizaline. These safe and open spaces are so important, especially these days. Aw, I'm so glad. Thank you. I appreciate everybody. Thank you, Rizaline. Shout out to Google. Life is barely long enough to get good at one thing, so be careful what you're good at. So good. Great. Yeah, time just flew. Seriously, can you believe it? 3 hours already. Honestly. Thank you, guys. All right. So for those of you who are new here, welcome. I do a rap freestyle every time I stream. No, it is not good, but you know what? Me not care. It's gonna be wonderful. It's super fun. It's something I look forward to every time I stream. So we are going to get the rap set up and then we're going to just dive right in. Exactly. Look at that disclaimer command. Hold on. All right, here we go. So the beginning portion of the rap is usually, is something I've, written before. And then after it just goes into a freestyle. So let's see what we come across today. Oh, this is going to be so bad. All right. This is that post Ravens real talk. Here we go. Oh, snap, it's my Ravens. This time with you, I'm a craven. Been looking forward to this all day. Let's have a scrumptious time today. Skippy doo bop, bop a bop. Moo moo bop a bop. Skit, scat, diddly doo, and spooky boogie boogie boo. Alright, okay, I had 3 guests. You don't want to test. I know all 3 of them by name. They so famous, they gon' rise to fame. First we got DJB. He came on here and he was one to see. He talked about all these scrumptious things. He also talked about them flings? No, you did not talk about flings. I'm sorry. Hold on. Then we had the scrumptious Jess. She's so damn scrumptious. She also talked about them things. She talked about her struggles with alcohol. I don't know what rhymes with alcohol. How about menthol? Menthol is, I think, a drug. Sometimes drugs makes you want to give hugs, but don't do drugs, kids. You can get hugs in other ways and then don't have kids. Yes, I said don't have kids. Oh, menthol, pretty good. I'll talk about flings in the future. Okay. Hold on. Don't think I forgot about Subby. He came up in here talking about tobacco, and he also talked about the dubby. He does dabs on his stream. I don't know if that's the truth, but I'm on his team because he's so good at the guitar. And no, I'm not a hater. Okay, I'm done. I'm so sorry. As always, I hope you all have a damn scrumptious night. I am wishing your heart and your mind and your soul and your spirit and your body peace and happiness. Please choose to be kind to yourself and to others. Stay safe, stay scrumptious, and God willing, I will see you all tomorrow. Good night. Thank you all for spending your precious time with me. I very much appreciate it. Good night, everyone. Raven out. Let's go.